Chapter 1358. Furthermore, along the tens of thousands of miles of journey, there had been continuous ambushes with very few gaps. However, when it came to using Python 9, there were not many. Most of the battles were handled by Yin Yang. As long as he could handle it, even if it took up a lot of time and energy, he would not use Python 9's strength to resolve it. Even when Python 9 thought that the opponent's combined combat power was more than a level higher than Yin Yang's, and that Yin Yang could not handle it, Yin Yang still managed to hold on and handle it. Therefore, although he had Python 9 as his support along the way, there were only a few battles where Python 9's strength was actually used. All of them were when the opponent's combat power far exceeded Yin Yang's upper limit. Even in such battles, Yin Yang would lure the enemy to a specific location and only let Python 9 fight after confirming that the outside world could not know the actual situation of the battle. After all, Python 9's existence was a great treasure to Yin Yang, a trump card that could save his life. He could not allow it to be exposed prematurely. In the end, Yin Yang asked Python 9 to keep a distance away from him, either to the front or to the back. At least to Yin Yang's enemies, Yin Yang had to walk alone on the sidewalk, which made him look even more isolated and vulnerable. As for Yin Yang pretending to be heavily injured, hiding the bloodstains on him, or hiding in some secret place to heal himself to lure the enemy, he had done it many times, and it had worked every time. As the vanguard was defeated time and time again, the attacking enemy's combat power escalated, gradually exceeding the range that Yin Yang could handle. Fearing that there would be an accident, Python 9 sent Yin Yang away. By sending him away, he meant to tear the space apart and stop the battle. Yin Yang denied it directly, and directed a new chapter instead, setting up a new situation. Yin Yang had Python 9 lie on the ground and pretend to be heavily injured. Then, as the continent's hero, Yin Yang kindly went forward to save him, but was ambushed by the old man who had fallen to the ground. Then, the subsequent plot could be imagined. With such a precondition, how could those who wished for Yin Yang's death not seize the opportunity to strike when they knew about it? It was a pity that their attacks had all ended when Yin Yang had escaped to Mang 9's side, and when Mang 9 had suddenly attacked. At least at that moment, the expressions on the faces of those experts who had come to kill Yin Yang were all indescribable. All the intelligence had shown that this child was a lone wolf. How could there be an additional saint fighter? Where did this person come from? Having an additional helper was secondary, but it was strange that this helper was a saint realm expert. The number of such experts in the world could be counted on two hands. How could one of them suddenly appear here? When Python 9 made his move, he was naturally invincible and flawless. Yin Yang, who was responsible for cleaning up the aftermath, killed all the enemies without mercy. Throughout the entire process, Yin Yang did not utter a word or make a sound, nor did he ask for their names. Throughout, Yin Yang did not speak, nor did he ask for their names. Even if you are a saint, the strongest protector of mankind, if you want to kill me, life and death are fated. Riches and honor are determined by the heavens. How can you show mercy? 9 of a speechless of him. I am a saint expert, the lord of the Tianfa Holy Land. With such a noble identity, I am actually treated as a hired thug today, an accomplice tomorrow, a beggar, a thief, a vagrant, and even a sneak attacker who pretends to be seriously injured. You change your identity one moment, a new identity every day. You're making me feel like I'm about to collapse. I was just being polite. You've helped us a lot, so you can tell me what you need me to do. But who would have thought that you would be so impolite? Now when he needed me, he would directly shout, "Come." He didn't even address him as Elder Mang. When I'm not needed, I'll just say, "Go." What the hell is this? Where was the basic respect between people? I've never thought of blocking anyone's path, nor would I take the initiative to interfere in anyone's so-called major affairs. But now that they think that I'm blocking their path and threatening their future, they want to kill me. How can I just wait to be killed? I won't be merciful. Not only will I kill such a person, but I will also kill him once and for all. In the face of Yin Yang's murderous aura, even Mang Jiao was slightly shaken. Along the way, The number of saint monarchs killed by Yin Yang was more than 20, and there were also a few high-level saint monarchs killed by Mangjiu's help. This journey was truly a bloody path of saint monarchs, with all the experts dying. As for Yin Yang, the culprit of all this, his gaze and expression were calm, as if he had come on a sightseeing tour. There wasn't even a hint of murderous aura on him, which was another strange thing. Even after such a massacre, there was actually no murderous aura on him. When the human city finally appeared in the distance, Mangjiu finally heaved a sigh of relief. The escort had finally been completed. There was no one who came to intercept them for the last 8,000 miles. But Yin Yang still continued to set up traps and made Mangjiu cooperate. Mangjiu had long broken down. His worldview was no longer the same, and his heart of Tao was flawed. Yin Yang, have you broken through to first-level Saint Monarch? Mangjiu asked Yin Yang. Yes. Yin Yang did not hide it. He had persevered all the way, not borrowing any strength, as much as he could just to break through his own limits through the pressure of life and death. After successfully breaking through, of course, he would try his best to make use of the best resources he could, and make the greatest use of Mangjiu's trump card. Mangjiu was silent for a moment before he said, "Can I ask you about the word monarch? Which path are you taking?" Saint Monarch, Saint Monarch. The word monarch was the path of a saint monarch. Countless people were trying to comprehend the word monarch. Some people walked on the path of a gentleman. Some people walked on the path of a ruler. Some people walked on the path of a false ruler. This word, unless it was related to a profound cultivator, was closely related to almost everyone in the world. Everyone could walk their own path from this word, a path that belonged to them. However, more than 99% of people could hardly step into this realm in their entire lives. Every comprehension was a different kind of path. Back then, Mangjiu had been obsessed with this path for 3,000 years. He kept asking himself, what path am I taking? What kind of monarch am I? If one path is wrong, he would choose another one and walk it again. However, after countless attempts, he still could not step into it. It was something that could be seen but not reached. Finally, one day, he had an epiphany and stepped into the path of a saint monarch. The joy he felt at that moment was indescribable. As for Yin Yang, according to Mangjiu's knowledge, he had only stayed at the door of the path of a saint monarch for a month or two at most. Had he already walked through it? Mangjiu was a little doubtful and a little worried. He did not believe that Yin Yang had really advanced so quickly, but he was also worried that Yin Yang might have taken the wrong path. One wrong step, and it would be hard to turn back. Once he had taken the wrong path, it would not be something that could be reversed in decades, or even centuries. Yin Yang smiled and said, "Everyone has their own understanding of cultivation. There is no need to be selfish. I think that this word monarch, it is not the path of a ruler, nor is it the path of a gentleman. It is only a word, a pure word. It has more meaning, and it has less to do with the path I want to walk. That is all." Mangjiu was dumbfounded. Huh, aren't you ignoring the existence of the word monarch? Even with his upbringing, he could not help but look surprised when he heard Yin Yang's unexpected words. It could be said that his state of mind had been greatly impacted. He truly did not expect Yin Yang to tread such a path. The moment of realization, my state of mind was suddenly enlightened. It was only a span of 2 hours, and I became a first-level saint monarch. It was also from that day onwards that our strategy against our enemies changed greatly. Yin Yang smiled and said casually, "Other than confirming that I had indeed broken through, I also thought that the so-called path of a saint monarch, at least when this path was first created, wasn't the original intention. It was just that it was misunderstood by the later generations." Misunderstood? Mangjiu was speechless. If a saint monarch is a path, then a saint monarch is also a path. Saint monarchs, are they not paths? Even if it is the level of a saint monarch, it is still just a level. I really have nothing more to say, and there is nothing for me to comprehend. Yin Yang smiled faintly. "Thank you, Senior, for escorting me along the way. We have plenty of time in the future. May we meet again?" Mangjiu was still in a daze. Nothing to comprehend. Nothing to comprehend. Yet, since the beginning of time, How many people have been tormented by this stage? Many of them did not have the opportunity, and could not even advance for tens of thousands of years, dying of old age before the threshold of a saint monarch. Yet, it had fallen into this fellow's mouth so easily and disdainfully. You've been on your way. Meng Jiao wanted to remind Yun Yang to be careful and cautious, but he swallowed the words when they were at the tip of his tongue. This child really had nothing to remind him of. Along the way, his craftiness was secondary. His cautiousness were simply too much. Any kind of scheme, in the eyes of this brat, was as clear as a blazing fire. The so-called ambush, it was as if there was no place for it to hide. It was all in his eyes. Why would such a person need Meng Jiao to remind him to be careful? The ones who should be careful should be those who came to kill him. Meng Jiao chortled. This old man is leaving. Before his laughter could echo, Meng Jiao had already soared into the sky and turned into a golden ray, disappearing into the horizon. He did not bid Yun Yang farewell. He firmly believed that they would meet again one day. A person like Yun Yang would not die no matter what, as long as he did not seek his own death. Along the way, those who went against him, no matter what cultivation base they had, were all dead. Yun Yang watched Meng Jiao leave. He stood where he was for a while before he turned and flew towards the mountain he had passed. He desperately needed to find a quiet place to cultivate in seclusion for another 2 days. There was no other reason, it was because he had broken through. However, this breakthrough referred to the endless divine art. Along the way, the karmic energy that had almost been filled up was now completely filled up. In fact, there was even a bit of excess left. Emmy had grown new leaves in the subterranean space, while the lotus stem beneath it had grown more than twice its original size. Yun Yang had been suppressing it until now, waiting for the moment when no one was by his side. Yun Yang moved swiftly and came to a hidden spot at the foot of the mountain. After making sure that there was no one around, he punched a hole at the foot of the mountain with a punch and quickly entered it. Countless gravel poured down from behind him, filling up the hole in a matter of breaths. Yun Yang, who had just dived tens of thousands of feet deeper into the ground. It was only then that Yun Yang began to open his deific consciousness space. Ayya! Emmy's joyful voice came as expected. It extended its new leaves to Yun Yang's nose like it was presenting a treasure. Other than the color of the new leaves, the thickness, size, and even the hairs and spikes on the leaves were no different from the old leaves. Yun Yang studied Emmy carefully and realized that other than the new leaves and the lotus stem beneath it having grown a lot longer, Emmy's body had grown as well, almost twice its previous size. The entire deific consciousness space had undergone a drastic change once again. As far as the eye could see, the countless spirit herbs were all thriving. Groups of little fairies were flying back and forth, happily serving the herbs in the field. They were busy and happy, but they were enjoying it. In the sky, the purple chi that was so dense that it was almost tangible washed over the space again and again endlessly. The herb field was now so vast that one could not see the end of it. It was like a boundless grassland. However, this grassland was made entirely of spiritual herbs and spiritual plants. Yun Yang felt that something was amiss with a glance. When he turned his head again, he could not help but be surprised. It seems like there are a lot more of these little sprites. Ayya! Emmy looked proud as it waved its vines, waiting for Yun Yang's praise. Oh! As Yun Yang's thoughts raced, he came to a realization. There were already plenty of spiritual herbs in the space that had sufficient spiritual consciousness, but there was no opportunity to activate them. Now that these little sprites had come in, it could be said that they were a catalyst to activate the spiritual nature of the spiritual herbs and spiritual plants that had sufficient foundation. Emmy had, of course, added fuel to the fire in this process. Therefore, in less than a month, there were no less than 1 million little sprites in the space. With such a change, the chi of spiritual herbs and the chi of vitality had multiplied a few times compared to before. Yun Yang had a surreal feeling. In his deific consciousness space now, even a saint-level cultivator would feel suffocated if he were to breathe in it, let alone an ordinary person. The spiritual air was too thick. This kind of spiritual chi was much stronger than the spiritual chi in the Eastern Celestial Palace. Yin-yang studied the spiritual fields in detail and saw that there was a small ditch beside each herb field that flowed slowly. The water flowing in the ditch was obviously the liquid form of extremely refined spiritual qi. The spiritual qi in the sky would form droplets of water every once in a while. Just a small bottle of this spiritual qi water alone seemed to be enough to form a spiritual vein in an ordinary mountain range and supply an ordinary sect with several generations of consumption. There were also places that Emi had specially opened up that were especially rich in spiritual qi. Those places had already begun to condense into light purple spiritual qi pellets the size of a finger. They were piled up over there, emitting a faint purple glow. The spiritual qi in these tiny spiritual pellets was even purer than the supreme-grade spiritual jade. Phew! Phew! Chapter 1359. In the deific consciousness space, other than the huge change in the spiritual farm, the place where the various rare metals were placed had also undergone a drastic change. The countless rare metals that had been collected over the past few days had been piled up there. Emi had been busy tending to the spiritual farm and had not been able to free itself. Later on, there had been too much that it had affected Emi's sense of beauty. After the herb field sprite's foundation was stabilized, Emi had purposely spent a few days to sort it out and refine all the metals, leaving only the most essential parts. The metals that had once been a dozen mountains were now reduced to small mounds that were tightly clustered together, glowing in a myriad of colors. Any piece of metal here could be used to forge an unparalleled divine weapon. The remaining dregs, which were the leftovers from the refinement, and the parts that could not be used, had been temporarily stored by Emi somewhere and isolated by the gray fog. Out of sight, out of mind. When Yin-yang came in, Emi pulled Yin-yang over and pointed at the pile of rubbish, yelling. What it meant was, of course, get rid of this trash quickly. Yin-yang was speechless. He was underground now. How could he have the space to deal with the trash? Of course, he would have to wait until he got out. Yin-yang's advancement into a Saint Lord was related to his comprehension of the word ruler. But if it was only about comprehension, he could not have achieved a breakthrough so quickly. He had been suppressing it, and was now a first-level Saint Lord pinnacle. But it was difficult to do so. The endless divine art had advanced to the next level, but he had only unleashed less than a tenth of its strength. The so-called stabilizing of the current level was mainly to sort out the new realm of the endless divine art. Endless divine art 7th tier. After the 7 golden lotus leaves had experienced the vicissitudes of life, with the flip of heaven and earth, with a wave of the sleeve, the heart of heaven and my heart, only then will I know that the world of mortals is still the same. After the vicissitudes, as Yin-yang felt the endless divine art slowly flowing into his meridians, he tried to comprehend these 4 lines. With the flip of heaven and earth, with a wave of the sleeve, only then will I know that the world of mortals is still the same. Yes, now that he had come this far, it was only then that he received news of Ji Lingxi and the rest. Looking back on the past, it felt like it was just yesterday. The world of mortals is still the same. Yin-yang sighed softly. After the breakthrough, the endless divine art's power was immensely powerful. It had even increased his understanding of the power of laws. Just the first contact with it, the boundless power had already shocked Yin-yang. However, Yin-yang was not surprised by the breakthrough. Instead, he was touched by the new incantation. The world of mortals is still the same. But what about people? He suddenly had the urge to go back to the profound sky continent to take a look. What happened to the world that had nurtured him? How were old Marshal Chiu and the others? Little nephew, how is he now? Was everything going well? There were also many good friends, the 4 young masters and their former comrades. All of them seemed to have frozen in front of their eyes. Thinking of this, Yin-yang could not help feeling a sense of melancholy. The world of mortals is still the same. But I wonder if my old friends are still there? Amidst the haze, a figure suddenly appeared, wielding the blade of heaven's will. Destiny Blade Technique, the 7th move. The 7th stance of the Destiny Blade Technique was still one saber with 2 forms. The first form, vicissitudes of the saber. The second move, red dust saber. Unsheathing the saber to calm the vicissitudes of life, No worries in the world of mortals, no injuries. Watching the waves of blood rise to the sky, letting the world run wild. Yun Yang comprehended all of this, slowly entering a mystical world of nothingness and nothingness. Time passed quietly as Yun Yang continued to meditate. This time, the period of enlightenment was unprecedentedly long for Yun Yang. In the blink of an eye, half a year had gone by. To a cultivator, half a year's worth of closed-door cultivation was nothing. It was not worth mentioning, but it was extraordinary for Yun Yang. The people in the outside world, especially, were beginning to panic. Half a year without a trace also meant that Yun Yang had disappeared. He had gone missing. How could the bound of universe's meritorious servant disappear? He wore a fox's face. Because he was sealed by the demonic race's heaven-sealing formation, he could no longer change his appearance. He was extremely conspicuous in the bound of universe. No matter where he went, he would be recognized immediately. Even if he had a black cloth covering his face, it was of little use. He could just remove the mask to confirm the identity of the suspicious masked person. Yun Yang had nowhere to hide, yet he had disappeared just like that. The higher-ups of the Eastern Celestial Palace, Western Holy Palace, and Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace were extremely anxious. Whether it was those who were worried about Yun Yang, or those who wanted to kill Yun Yang, they were all burning with anxiety. In total, there were 14 to 15 batches of people who had gone out to kill Yun Yang. The Eastern Celestial Palace had sent 6 batches, the Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace had sent 4, and the Western Holy Palace had sent 5 batches of experts. It was understandable that Yun Yang had disappeared, but the problem was that the people who had gone out to kill Yun Yang had disappeared as well. There were more than 50 Saint Monarchs, but none of them could be seen if they were alive or dead. This was too strange. Yun Yang had stirred up a storm in the demonic race previously, causing millions of demonic race members to fall. There were many extraordinary experts among them, but only the 12 dragon guards of the dragon race had reached the level of Saint Lords. The rest of the Saint Lords who were involved in the battle were at most injured, but none of them had truly perished. However, this incident had caused so many Saint Lords to go missing. If all of them had fallen, the overall loss of the human race's combat power would be even greater than the demonic races. That was not good news. The Eastern Celestial Palace. Dongfang Haoren's expression was dark. Looking at the 4 middle-aged men in front of him, his eyes were cold. Among the 4 of you, who knows? Who doesn't? Among these 4 people, one was Dongfang Haoren's son, and the other 3 were his disciples. They were known as the 4 Heavens Prides in the Eastern Celestial Palace. At the same time, they were also the 4 successors that the Eastern Celestial Palace was grooming. In the future, those who would try to enter the Supreme Heaven Pavilion to be selected would definitely be these 4. In other words, if Yin Yang did not appear, the next ruler of the Eastern Celestial Palace would definitely be one of these 4 people. The 4 people in front of Dongfang Haoren had uniform expressions. Their faces were solemn, a little angry, a little wronged, and a little worried. I did not do this, nor did I receive any information about this. Dongfang Haoren's son, Dongfang Xingchen, was the first to speak. His tone was even more furious. These fellows have gone too far. How could they do such a thing? Yin Yang is now the hero of the bound of universe, the continent's role model. His contributions to the present generation will be beneficial to the future generations. These people actually dared to do such a shady business. Father, this kind of thing must be put to an end. No matter who did it, they must be investigated and punished severely. There must be someone else behind the person who did it. They must also be investigated, and investigated thoroughly. Don't let them go unjustly. Dongfang Haoren's hawk-like gaze took a long look at his son, before he looked at the other 3. And Xinyu Yu Jinxiao Lai Kuangfeng, what do the 3 of you think? And Xinyu, who had the most gentle and elegant temperament among them, smiled faintly. Young Palace Lord's words are reasonable. The current situation is not just too much. It should be said that the pain of the close ones makes the enemy happy. Other than concurring, this disciple also suggests a thorough investigation. No matter what the original intention of the person who did it was, or whether the person behind them had given the instruction, they must be disqualified. Otherwise, it won't be enough to serve as a warning to others. Dongfang Haoren squinted his eyes at Yu Jinxiao and asked, "What do you say?" "This disciple agrees," Yu Jinxiao, who was full of vigor, said. "This disciple feels that the most urgent matter isn't to investigate the source, but to ensure sect leader Yin Yang's safety. This disciple volunteers to assist sect leader Yin. We will travel side by side and protect him closely." Lai Kuangfeng had a leopard's head and round eyes. He had a rough beard and his skin was as black as charcoal. Dongfang Haoren said faintly, "It's confirmed that they're not in the palace at the moment. They've already disappeared. Until now, the four of you have followers who haven't returned. According to what Ensinyu and Yu Jinxiao said, the four of you can basically be disqualified. Do you know that?" Ensinyu and Yu Jinxiao paled at the same time. "There's such a thing." Dongfang Xingchen and Lai Kuangfeng turned their heads at the same time, staring at them like hawks. Ensinyu said honestly, "This matter was definitely not instigated by me. If it was me, I, Ensinyu, have never gone back on my word for what I've done for so many years." Yu Jinxiao shook his head and smiled bitterly. "This matter came too abruptly. It's an interesting twist of events. It's very confusing." The four people's expressions were flawless, without a single flaw. Dongfang Haoren's face was still calm, but there was a dark flame burning in his eyes. Honestly, this matter had infuriated Dongfang Haoren. It was fine if something like this happened to the other celestial palaces, but the East Celestial Palace just had to have people involved as well, and there were quite a number of them. Yin Yang's matter, which he had been the mastermind behind, actually had such a humiliating turn of events. Where was his dignity? "Since none of you have any objections, this matter shall be concluded as such. I'll investigate this matter with all my might. Once I find out that there's someone among you who instigated this, that person will lose the right to inherit the Celestial Palace." Dongfang Haoren paused for a moment before continuing. "Speaking of which, there are many reasons for this matter. Putting myself in your shoes, I can understand your feelings and understand your momentary confusion. If any of you, no matter who it is, explain the matter yourself, I'm not an unreasonable person. It'll only be an internal punishment, and I won't pursue responsibility in the future. I'll also be more lenient on that person's behalf." He looked at his son and his disciple expectantly. A person's heart was always biased. Dongfang Haoren did not wish for the culprit of Yin Yang's misfortune to be his son or disciple. Even if it was them, Dongfang Haoren was willing to give them a chance. To an elder, making a mistake was not something to be afraid of. As long as one could face one's mistake squarely and admit it, one would be a good child and could still be saved. Therefore, Dongfang Haoren made this promise personally. He hoped that his beloved successor would cherish this chance and not miss it, because this was the only chance to turn back. "This matter has nothing to do with me. I'm not involved at all." Dongfang Xingchen was very calm. He shook his head lightly and looked at the other three with a mocking gaze. "It has nothing to do with me. I'm not involved at all." And Xingyu smiled faintly, her eyes filled with sincerity as she said, "My three junior brothers, if what you did is, there is no need to endure so bitterly. Master has always kept his promise. Since I've already made a promise, I will never go back on it. Don't let go of this chance to turn back easily. A single slip will lead to eternal regret, and when you turn back, it will already be 100 years later." Yu Jinxiao said in a low voice, "It has nothing to do with me. Although you said that this matter has nothing to do with you, I still have to give you a word of advice. Master's promise is worth 1,000 gold. If you lose this opportunity, it won't come again. Don't make a mistake. You must know that whether or not you did it is the truth. It is hard to cover it up. Sect leader Yin is not dead now. As long as he testifies, it is only a matter of time before the truth comes out. Senior brothers and junior brothers don't regret it." Lai Kuangfeng said in a low muffled voice, "I didn't do it anyway. If you regret a promise, it has nothing to do with me." He rolled his eyes and said, "To be honest, there aren't many people who follow me. Master, you shouldn't have included me in this list. I don't have any competition at all. It's really meaningless to accompany the exam." Dongfang Haoren closed his eyes, and revealed an indescribable smile. He said, "My promise only ends today. After today, it will be gone forever. It will be too late to find me to admit my mistakes. I'll say this first, so don't blame me for not warning you." The four nodded at the same time. "Many thanks to Master, Father. We will remember." Good, good, good. Dongfang Haoren stood up and his voice became very cold. "You've all grown up. Take care of yourselves." Before his voice fell, his figure flashed and disappeared without a trace. The four looked at each other in dismay, not saying anything for a long time. Who did this? Let's quickly find Master and explain it. The person involved didn't die, so it's not a big deal. There will always be a way to turn things around. Lai Guangfeng said in a rough voice. Right now, we're just holding on to it. It's tiring for everyone, making it so that I won't be able to get out of this mess. Why bother? When the other three heard this, they all gave a cold snort and went their separate ways. His figure flashed and Dongfang Haoren had already returned to his secret room. He sat down in a chair and pinched the space between his eyebrows, his face filled with depression. In the empty room, a voice suddenly sounded. Did none of them admit it? No, as expected, no one admitted it. That voice said. Then what are you going to do next? Dongfang Haoren lightly said. I've already given them a chance. You need to be careful. That voice reminded him. Of course, my promise will continue until tonight. This is the final deadline. After that, life and death will be decided by fate. Wealth and honor will be decided by the heavens. Dongfang Haoren snorted and said, Speaking of which, I think Shimen Fengfu and Beigong Liuli will not be any better off than me. He gave a deep sigh. If humans could eliminate this kind of scheming between their own people, how good would that be? You have to know that even the strongest fortress will be broken from within. After fighting for humanity for so many years, why can't we see through it even now? This so-called power, is it really that important? The mental state of a peak human cultivator is only this, nothing more than this. Once mysterious yellow is taken over by the Yao race due to internal strife, even if they become the master of the heavenly palace, what can they do? Why can't they understand such a simple logic? Dongfang Haoren looked up at the sky and sighed. I'm very disappointed. That voice was silent and did not make a sound. He completely understood Dongfang Haoren's feelings. But he was also clear that even if these people understood this logic, they would still do it. Everyone knew how to play tricks. Everyone knew how to talk about logic. But how many people could actually do it? The word power was enough to make over 99% of the people in history be blinded by greed. They would do their best and would not waver even in death. Palace Master, this matter. Let's wait and see for now. He still gave his own suggestion. If we forcefully interfere, I'm afraid it will have the opposite effect. At that time, it will be even worse. Dongfang Haoren's eyes were cold. I'm very interested right now. I want to see how daring they are, and how bad the situation will be at that time. There were 2 meetings in 3 consecutive days. Chapter 1360. Dongfang Haoren was right. The leaders of Western Heaven Saint Palace and Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace were furious as well. Facing the few successors chosen by themselves and the elders, they were filled with regret and rage. However, all the successors said in unison that it had nothing to do with them. Shimen Fafu was enraged. Is it really none of your business? Or perhaps in your minds, it's none of your business as long as you don't instruct or do it yourself. With your status and position today, do you still need such shallow and crude methods? You don't even need to say a word, just a hint from your eyes, a slight change in your expression, and it's enough to make everything happen. Do you still insist that it has nothing to do with you? Or do you think that I can't do anything to you just because your methods are flawless, and you didn't leave any concrete evidence? Do you know how your actions put the safety of the entire bound of universe, and all the humans in it? How much effort has the palace spent to nurture these experts for so many years? Don't tell me it's just to let your little desire for power be consumed in this most despicable of battles? So many top-notch human cultivators didn't die in the hands of the demons, but in the hands of their own kind, in the hands of a human hero who has just been acknowledged. This is the greatest humiliation and irony. And what a tragedy it is. Shimondofu's furious roar shook the entire Western Heaven Sacred Palace, causing it to tremble. However, his 2 sons and 2 disciples in front of him looked like they had a clear conscience. And they were innocent. Father, please calm down. Master, please calm down. We really didn't do it. It really has nothing to do with us. The Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace was also in a similar situation. All of the qualified candidates refused to acknowledge him. There was nothing Baigong Liuli could do about it. The number of high-level experts who came out to kill Yun Yang increased, and the murderous aura intensified. Then everyone, including the masters of the 3 heavenly palaces, had an answer that they desperately wanted to know. Where had Yun Yang gone? Why did it seem like he had vanished into thin air? If he was waiting for an opportunity to escape, wasn't he too good at hiding? In addition, the experts who had set out to kill Yun Yang had disappeared as well, as if they had never existed in this world. Be it the killers or the victims, none of them are alive or dead. Where did all these bastards go? Even if he's dead, there should at least be some traces. Where's the corpse? Why is it so strange? Can it make people less worried? The 3 great heavenly palaces all had their own unique methods to find out where their subordinates were. Even if they had died, they would still be able to locate them. This was so that it would be easier to guide the soul fragments back. None of the clans still had the extravagant hope that those who had gone to intercept them were still alive, because the life tablets they had left in the palace had all been broken. They must have all died, fallen. But even if he was dead, where did he die? Where did he die? How did he die? How did he die? How did he die? There wasn't even a trace of his soul fragment. Could it be that sect leader Yun actually has a method to devour the souls of saints? Slowly, there were more and more experts on the 2 possible routes that Yun Yang could take. One of them, of course, led from the East Palace to the residence of 9 Supremes. The other led to the residence of 9th Supremes in the demonic palace of Northern Wilderness. As for Yun Yang's encounter, the residence of 9 Supremes and the residence of 9th Supremes had begun to move in secret as well, coming to his aid. Among the Demiurge flawed 10 in the residence of 9 Supremes, other than Ping Xiaoyi and Guanwanyang, Shi Wuchen and the rest had all been dispatched, coming through the night. On the other hand, Ji Lingxi and Shengguan Lingxiu had personally made their move, coming in a grandiose manner, keeping a high profile wherever they passed. Everything else aside, rendezvous with Yun Yang was not the best plan. Doing so would only make him an obvious target, especially when the news that was spread was that the people who wanted to kill Yun Yang were top-notch cultivators from the 3 heavenly palaces. They were all Saint Lords. Whether it was Shi Wuchen or Ji Lingxi, their cultivation base had improved tremendously. It was still like a mantis trying to stop a chariot when they were up against a Saint Lord. If they were to really rendezvous with Yun Yang, not only would they become a burden, they would also be an unnecessary burden to Yun Yang. However, they had to at least create a commotion and spread it to the world, telling Yun Yang where they were. If you're in danger, if you're in trouble, you can come in this direction. We'll face it together. Even if they could not meet up for the time being, they could not expose themselves recklessly. They could communicate in secret, and there was a certain degree of control in between. Shi Wuchen and the 2 ladies believed that Yun Yang would definitely be able to control this degree. For a moment, the bound of universe looked calm on the surface, but the undercurrents were surging in the dark. What surprised everyone was that Yun Yang was completely oblivious to all of this. He who was underground was cultivating in seclusion, concentrating on his cultivation, intending to advance further. The cultivation process this time was very different from all the previous ones. The demonic heaven ceiling formation was still in place, preventing his body from absorbing any external spiritual qi. He could only rely on the deific consciousness space within him to be self-sufficient. Another effect of this situation was that the spiritual qi in the outside world did not fluctuate at all in Yun Yang's current cultivation state. Even the most skilled cultivator would not be able to sense it. This was also the fundamental reason why the 3 great heavenly palaces' assassins had no target to search for. The moment Yun Yang ascended to the level of a saint, the residents of Nine Supremes' celestial luck banner reacted immediately and changed again. The entire territory of the residents of Nine Supremes turned into a spiritual chi ocean, raging like a tsunami, filling the entire realm. At that moment, everyone within a radius of 5,000 kilometers fell silent. That day, Dong Qitian immediately decided to join the residents of Nine Supremes and become the official Great Elder. That day, Dong Qitian's intestines were swollen. He regretted it. If I had joined the residents of Nine Supremes earlier, and Yun Yang had successfully led the sect to upgrade to a middle-class celestial luck banner, I would have reaped a wave of benefits. If Yun Yang had advanced to a Supreme Saint, and the residents of Nine Supremes' celestial luck banner had changed accordingly, I would have reaped another wave of benefits. When the residents of Nine Supremes was bestowed with an upper-class celestial luck banner, I would have reaped another wave of benefits. And now, as the founder of the residents of Nine Supremes, Yun Yang, has ascended to the level of a saint, I would have reaped another wave of benefits. Now, when so many benefits are happening, I've never left the residents of Nine Supremes, but I've King missed none of them. I even have to join the residents of Nine Supremes at this time, because I'm afraid I'll miss the next wave of benefits. But I've already missed the first 4 waves. Dong Qitian was filled with regret. My sect is long gone. What am I waiting for? I've long seen that Yun Yang is not an ordinary person, and the residents of Nine Supremes must have a great development. But I've been hesitating and boasting about my identity. Now it's too late for regrets. Sigh. To join the residents of Nine Supremes, one must worship the founder of the sect. But who was the founder of the residents of Nine Supremes? Who else could it be other than Yun Yang? Dong Qitian stood there for a long time sulking, but he could not kneel no matter what. Ck, how could your father forget this? I actually have to kneel and kowtow to this child. But if you don't worship the founder, you're not considered to have truly joined the residents of Nine Supremes. Dong Qitian hypnotized himself in the end. I'm actually just a youth. I'm only 14. Strictly speaking, it's only been 3 to 4 years since I was saved by Yun Yang, returned to this world, and regained my new life. I'm only 3 to 4 years old. If that's the case, that child is my second parent. What's wrong with me kneeling to him? It's nothing. It's really nothing. He kept on hypnotizing himself, and kept on. Finally, Dong Qitian joined the residents of Nine Supremes. It was just that the old man felt that his face had long been thrown to the demon race. After insisting on completing the ceremony, he immediately returned to his cave abode to cultivate. A few months later, he still felt his face burning up. It was too shameful. Dong Qitian slapped himself hard twice. Ck, your father is so shameless. I've even thrown away my dignity for the sake of cultivation. If Yun Yang was here, he would only need to say the word, and the sect's great elder would be done. There would be no need to kneel and worship. There would definitely be resources allocated to him, and he could use them as he wished. He would be treated the same as the leader of the sect and so on. Now, however, Yun Yang was not here. He had to kneel and worship to complete the ceremony. Dong Qitian felt that he was too ashamed to face anyone. On the other side, it was even more rebellious. At the Phoenix Cry sect's side, Gan Tianyin and Ping Zhenyue, the 2 leaders of the sect, were dumbfounded. All the Phoenix Cry sect's higher-ups were hopping mad as well. The disciples whom they had spent so much effort to snatch from the residents of Nine Supremes had collectively rebelled. In spite of this, they actually approved of these disciples' rebellion from the bottom of their hearts. There was nothing wrong with it. To these disciples, it was really impossible for them to not rebel. We didn't expect to come here at all. All of you forced us and promised us, tricking us here. Now, compared to our original companions, our cultivation is directly lagging behind by at least 4 major realms. Back then, everyone was still a gold mystic or earth mystic. Although there was a gap, it was just a little. With a little effort, we could catch up. Some of them were even a lot weaker than us. Now we've advanced to heaven mystic, but everyone else is a venerable or saint. The one who improved the fastest among them is already a saint king. This gap, back then, we were just a bunch of little kids. Now we're still little kids, but they Some of them already have a name in the martial world. Some of the little brothers who were with us back then have already entered some rankings. A large group of the little sisters who were with us back then have already become fairies in the martial world. And we're still doing it here. You're not leading us astray. You're setting us up for our deaths. Faced with such a situation, Ping Jinyue and Gan Tianyan were at their wits' end. What should they do? In all fairness, the progress of these disciples was several times faster than that of the regular disciples of the Phoenix Cry sect. They were indeed geniuses, and the higher-ups of the Phoenix Cry sect were very pleased with them. They would never forget what they had done at that time. However, this little bit of progress could not catch up to the residents of 9 Supremes, who had advanced a level in a few days. When the leader became the lord of the sect, everyone followed him. When the sect was promoted to a high-class sect, everyone followed him again. Now that the leader of the sect was promoted to a great sage, everyone naturally followed him and ascended to the heavens again. Although these were all done in passing, they were all special cases that could not be replicated or repeated. In the future, such benefits would never appear again. This was because these benefits could only appear when the Celestial Luck Banner's level rose, and the founder's personal achievements. It was impossible for Yin Yang to fall and then rise again, right? Even so, there would never be a second benefit like this. The residence of 9 Supremes. If we go further up, it'll be the palace of 9 Supremes. Gan Tianyan sighed. Ping Jinyue was speechless for a long time. She had nothing to say. Luola's cultivation has already caught up to mine. If I were to fight with her, other than taking advantage of her experience, I wouldn't have any other way to keep that girl in check. Gan Tianyan sighed again, her eyes flickering. Ping Jinyue was still speechless. Of course, Jiang Luolua was not completely a member of the residence of 9 Supremes. She still had the identity of Phoenix Cry Sect's eldest senior sister. But as the daughter-in-law of Luo Dajiang, the founder of the sect, she could be considered half a member of the residence of 9 Supremes. So much so that her cultivation base also rose along with it. It had only been a short time, but she had already caught up to Gan Tianyan. As for Luo Dajiang and the others, their current cultivation base had already greatly surpassed all the higher-ups of Phoenix Cry sect. This reality made the higher-ups of Phoenix Cry sect feel both aggrieved and envious. When they first came to the residence of 9 Supremes, the spiritual chi there was already several times thicker than ours. Now it's more than 10 times stronger. Ping Jinyue could only sigh and say nothing else. Such a sect is too terrifying. We're the chief of the middle-class sect now, just one step away from the upper-class sects. But why do we feel so much worse than the residents of 9 Supremes? Why do we look so shabby? A few elders whispered to each other. Gan Tianyan also sighed. Compared to the residents of 9 Supremes, we feel like we're even more inferior than a lower-class sect. How should I put it? Other than being upset, there's nothing else. Some of the higher-ups who had stayed in Phoenix Cry sect all year round were even more jealous. You're still upset? No matter what, you can take turns to cultivate in the residence of 9 Supremes. Look at your cultivation base, it's just a gradual improvement. You've already pulled ahead of us, okay? How can you still talk like this? If you're upset, then we don't even need to live anymore? If we're really upset, we're the ones who are upset, okay? Faced with the various situations of Phoenix Cry sect, Ping Jinyue felt a headache coming on. She felt one thing thoroughly. The people's hearts were scattered, and it was difficult to lead the team. I'm so hot that my whole body is sticky. I have to shower 4 to 5 times a day. Chapter 1361. Actually, the residence of 9 Supreme seems to be thriving now, but there are still many problems in the sect. An elder suggested hesitantly. If what? Ping Jinyue glared at him. The elder did not dare to continue. However, after being glared at by Ping Jinyue, he made up his mind and said everything that was in his mind. The residence of 9 Supremes is always short of manpower. As the saying goes, it's easy to add flowers to a brocade, but difficult to provide charcoal in a snowstorm. If we join the residence of 9 Supremes now, how dare you? Ping Jinyue smashed the table with a bang. She was furious, and her face was flushed. Are Are you planning to give away all of your ancestors' businesses? How can this be considered giving away? When the elder made up his mind, he felt a sense of relief. Sect leader, think about it. We've been watching from the sidelines, watching the rise of the residents of Nine Supremes. How many sects in the entire continent are on good terms with the residents of Nine Supremes now? We are the closest to the residents of Nine Supremes. The residents of Nine Supremes is growing too fast now. We have almost no middle-level manpower, and the management is inevitably chaotic. It can be said that we need middle-level manpower now. If we join them now, we'll be giving them a helping hand. It'll be like sending charcoal in a snowstorm. Our status in the future won't be too awkward, and our disciples will be able to develop better. We can even keep the name of Phoenix Cry Sect. At most, we will have the name of a branch sect of the residents of Nine Supremes. However, if the residents of Nine Supremes is upgraded to the Palace of Nine Supremes, then we will no longer be providing help in a snowstorm, and we will not even be considered as adding flowers to a brocade. We will only be able to curry favor with them. If that really happens, it will be more awkward. These disciples outside are all the seed disciples of our sect, and they are also the most talented ones in the history of the Phoenix Cry sect. They are now rebellious and agitated, and we have nothing to say. Things have already come to this point. What else can we say? Even if we try our best to suppress them, when they become the masters of the sect, will the Phoenix Cry sect still exist? Or what will the world situation be like at that time? Sect leader, I implore you, please think it over, think it over. How dare you? Shut up. There is no need to think about it. I will never think about it. Ping Junhua was enraged and shouted loudly. When Ping Junhua looked over, she felt helpless. She saw that many of the Phoenix Cry sect's upper echelon were not angry at all. Instead, they seemed to be in deep thought. Ping Junhua almost vomited blood. She suddenly recalled that Yun Yang had been extremely generous when he had invited the higher-ups of Phoenix Cry sect to discuss the distribution of disciples. Look at the present. Recalling Yun Yang's generosity all those years ago, his subtle smile floated before her eyes again. Ping Junhua's anger soared to the heavens, and she clenched her teeth so hard that they almost broke. Today, I finally understand that ambiguous smile of yours. Yun Yang, you bastard. It turns out that you already had the evil intention of swallowing the Phoenix Cry sect. No wonder he didn't seem to care about anything at that time. He had already thought of this day, so he didn't need to be calculative because, in the end, it would still be his. Damn it, Ping Junhua gritted her teeth. I won't let you succeed. That day, the meeting of the Phoenix Cry sect's upper echelon ended in an unprecedented silence. The atmosphere was unprecedentedly depressing. However, some taboo topics were finally brought up, and some seeds were sown. Since the seeds had been sown, they would only take root and sprout as much as possible in the residence of Nine Supremes, which was so fertile that it made one's hair stand on end. How could there be anything else? That night, Gan Tianyan quietly came to Ping Junhua's room. Senior sister, actually, I have some thoughts about this matter. What thoughts? I just feel that it's not completely impossible for the Phoenix Cry sect to merge with the residents of Nine Supremes. Gan Tianyan said hesitantly. Hearing Gan Tianyan's words, Ping Junhua was stunned. She glared at her most loyal junior sister, her two pretty eyeballs almost popping out of her head. What did you say? Gan Tianyan swallowed. Senior sister, I think the timing is delicate now. If we don't take advantage of the situation, it'll be too late. Besides, we're not the whole sect that has no autonomy at all. The name of a branch sect of the residents of Nine Supremes is still very feasible. Ping Junhua was dumbstruck, as if she did not hear anything. We're only relying on them in name. In reality, the Phoenix Cry sect is still the Phoenix Cry sect. Gan Tianyan's face was red as she said hesitantly, it's only under the name of the residents of Nine Supremes. With Luoluo here, the residents of Nine Supremes definitely won't go overboard. Ping Junhua was so angry that she was panting, and her eyes were like bells. You get out. Seeing that her senior sister was about to explode, and was about to hit someone, Gan Tianyan covered her head and scurried away. Ping Junhua was fuming in her room, and she kept slamming the table. Public morals are degenerating day by day. Public morals are not what they used to be. Sinners of all ages. Deceiving the master and destroying the ancestors. This is a disgrace. However, after thinking about it for a while, her thoughts gradually turned to, if she could really not completely merge with the residents of Nine Supremes, and only rely on them, this atmosphere, and Jiang Lola's favor. No. How can I think like that? I'm the leader of the Phoenix Cry sect. I can't do that. I shouldn't even think about it. But if I only rely on them. Don't talk. We'll talk after Leader Yin returns. The next day, Ping Zhanyue looked at the higher-ups of the sect with a cold face, and her voice was as cold as ice. All of you calm down during this period of time. Think about your hearts. Can you still face your ancestors? Whether you can face the legacy of the eternal Phoenix Cry sect. The leader's words were very harsh. The higher-ups of the Phoenix Cry sect agreed submissively, but most of them were secretly relieved. Nice words. You're just making it sound nice. You're just acting like you're being forced by us. Who can't see that you've already given in? You're lying to yourself. The Phoenix Cry sect was waiting for a suitable opportunity. The residents of Nine Supremes was also waiting for an opportunity. On the other hand, the residents of Nine Supremes' prestige was still growing, and its reputation was growing louder by the day. It was to the extent that when the disciples of the newly established residents of Nine Supremes walked outside, they all held their heads high and chests puffed out, brimming with indescribable pride. The disciples of the residents of Nine Supremes' clothes were embroidered with the exclusive emblem of the residents of Nine Supremes on their chests, and their sleeves were embroidered with the emblem of each peak. The disciples attached great importance to these two emblems, ensuring that they were clean and shining at all times. There were many disciples in the residence of Nine Supremes, and the number of daily clothes for the 4 seasons of the year was a considerable number. Naturally, the material of the clothes could not be too outstanding. Most of the disciples' clothes were no different from ordinary people's. Perhaps it was because people were in high spirits, or because the ordinary clothes of a sect with an upper-class celestial luck banner had become a legend. But in short, the disciples gave the impression that they were much more extraordinary, as if they were dazzling and brilliant. One day, an explosive news swept across the bound of universe. The heirs of the holy sons of the heavenly palaces had already left the mountain and entered the martial world to roam the mortal world. As soon as the news came out, all the palaces below the Sacred Heart Palace reacted immediately. The heirs of the palace masters had also left the mountain to train. Among them, Zhan Wufei, the palace master of the Sacred Heart Palace under the Eastern Celestial Palace, was the most popular. There was no other reason than the fact that the most popular hero of the bound of universe, Yun Yang, had been appointed by him in the first place. That was how he had stirred up the demon clan later on. Naturally, he was also praised. His discerning eyes alone were unparalleled. On the other side, Jilingxi, who had not seen her for a long time, had also led the experts of the residents of Ninth Supremes to Jinxiao City, traveling day and night. Jinxiao City was the biggest city on the way from the holy land of divine punishment to the inner land. The residents of the Ninth Supremacy had almost turned out in full force this time. 2 sect leaders, 6 elders, and 2 high priests had come out in full force, and were moving at the same time. As soon as the group arrived in Jinxiao City, they were unusually high profile. They booked the largest inn in the city, and put up the sign of the residents of Ninth Supremes at once. As soon as the sign was hung up, the entire city was in an uproar. In an instant, everyone knew about it. The main reason why the news spread so quickly was naturally because of the ranking of the bound of universe's top 10 beauties. Anyone who had eyes to see and ears to listen knew that the residents of Ninth Supremes occupied the top 2 spots on the ranking. Who did not want to see their beauty with their own eyes to comfort themselves? Everyone shared the same thought. Countless martial world visitors swarmed over. It was a pity that the people of the residents of Ninth Supremes were unmoved. No matter who came, they ignored them and avoided meeting them. They did not give face to anyone. Jinxiao City's city lord's son had come to ask for an audience, but was thrown out after a disagreement. Later on, The city lord had come under the banner of apology, but received the same treatment. Whether it was courtesy or military force, none of it worked. Later on, he had even declared, "If you dare to disturb us again, believe it or not, I'll destroy Jinshao City." His tone was extremely domineering. Some people did not give up and wanted to use their connections to target the elders of the residents of Ninth Supremes. However, among the elders of the residents of Ninth Supremes, one of them did not care about anything at all, while the other was the famous Heaven's Inquisition. Their arrogance was even greater than that of the two leaders. They put on airs so high up in the sky, what connections could work? There were two other elders, but their main role was that of a visiting elder. They did not have any real power. Seeing that the elder's approach was not going to work, the group tried to go for the honorable ones. However, the two honorable ones of the residents of Ninth Supremes were called Ling Xiaozui and Duguchou. When he looked for the elders, the response was not very polite. But when he looked for these two, he told them that he wanted to see their sect leader, and these two people looked as if they wanted to dig up their ancestral graves. They immediately glared and unsheathed their swords. The outcome made all the martial world people who came to ask for an audience feel frustrated. "We want to meet your leaders, not your wives. Do you have to be so nervous? Why are you so angry?" How could they know that the consequences of meeting Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu were more severe than meeting their own wives to Ling Xiaozui and Duguchou? These two were Supreme Cloud's fiancés. They were from the same hometown and were close friends. Now that they had ascended to the bound of universe, they had even become subordinates. If they could not keep their families in check, would they not be suffering? On the top floor, Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu stood quietly in the air with black veils covering their faces. The area around the tower had long been sealed off by the residents of Ninth Supreme's deific consciousness. It was difficult for birds to pass through and people were scarce. To Night City, Ji Lingxi's voice was light. "Why does this city have such a tacky name like Tonight City? I've heard of this city's name before. Many years ago, the Bound of Universe's martial artists set out to defend the Mountain of Blood Soul. This place is the last supply stop before they reach the Mountain of Blood Soul. Naturally, the cultivators had to make their final preparations here. That night, the entire city drank to its heart's content, exhorting one another to not forget tonight, regardless of life or death." Shangguan Lingxiu's voice was a little melancholic as she said, "It was probably from then on that this city was renamed to Tonight City. There was no suggestion, it was just natural and logical." Her voice was soft, carrying an inexplicable sense of nostalgia, as if she was recalling the time when the Shangguan family of generals dominated the battlefield. Ji Lingxi sighed and said, "Heroes, the times create heroes. It's the same in every world." Shangguan Lingxiu smiled and said, "Yes, the times create heroes. It's the same everywhere. And the reason why the light in people's hearts has never been extinguished is precisely because there have always been heroes like this who keep appearing, who keep giving, who keep letting everyone remember and know that this world has never been shrouded in darkness. It's not only about fighting for power and profit. It's not only about deceit. It's not only about hatred. It's not only about male thieves and female prostitutes. It's not only about evil. This is the true light that will guide mankind forward. It is also the place where the true hope of mankind lies." Both girls fell silent at the same time. They closed their eyes and clenched their fists in front of their chests, paying their respects and praying to their heroic predecessors from thousands of years ago. After a long time, both girls opened their eyes and looked into the distance with worried gazes. Under the night sky, everything was dark and gloomy. "I heard that Yin Yang has turned into a fox now." Ji Lingxi's voice was low. Shangguan Lingxiu could not help but chuckle. She squinted her eyes and said, "In my heart, he's always been as cunning as a fox. How can I not know what's inside just by looking at his appearance? I still want to see with my own eyes how he looks now. Is he cute? Is he beautiful?" Chapter 1362. Ji Lingxi pursed her lips and said, "Forget it. Even if he turns into a pile of cough, that he'll still be cute in your eyes. Who are you trying to fool? Do you think I don't know what you're thinking?" Shangguan Lingxiu chuckled and retorted. You sound like you don't think the same way I do. A glint of longing flashed across Ji Lingxi's eyes, but she refused to admit defeat. She hugged her arms and snorted, saying, What's the use of liking him? He can't come near me right now, he'll get beaten up if he does. There's no such restriction for you though. Now that we've met, hee. Shyness and mischief flashed across her pretty eyes as she said, He's been looking forward to our wedding night for a long time. Shangguan Lingxiu's face was flushed behind her mask, but she snorted and said stubbornly, You little girl. Why are you spouting nonsense? But we're engaged to begin with. Even if it's nothing, it's a pity that I can't replace you no matter what. This time, it was Ji Lingxi's turn to be embarrassed. Sister Lingxiu, you're really... Shangguan Lingxiu blushed and said, Really what? Are you saying what's on your mind? Ji Lingxi grew more embarrassed and quickly changed the topic. Let's not talk about this. Say, what should we do if he really comes back with a fox's head this time? Shangguan Lingxiu breathed a sigh of relief and said, I didn't think that much. It doesn't matter if he has a fox's head or a snake's head. Even if he turns into a mouse. As long as he can come back safely. What could be better than him coming back to us safely and happily? Ji Lingxi nodded and said, You're truly a good wife and a loving mother, sister. I'm ashamed of my inferiority, but you're right. He must have suffered a lot at the demon clan's side. We should let him go for now. When things have settled down, we'll talk about his fox head again. His body no longer belongs to him alone. Shangguan Lingxiu bit her lip, blushing behind her mask as she said, Yes, his body has long been mine. If he has a fox's head, I won't do anything with him no matter what. Ji Lingxi blushed and perked up. Who's that? Don't you know how to do anything with him? Shyly, Shangguan Lingxiu turned and returned to her room. I'll do whatever you say. You know it very well. If you don't, think about it yourself. Ji Lingxi smiled and looked into the distance, sighing softly again. Where is he? Did he know how dangerous this return journey would be? To Night City, which occupied hundreds of thousands of acres of land, and had a population of more than 10 million people, constantly had the auras of experts rising and falling during this period of time. Not long after the arrival of the Eastern Celestial Palace's son of Saint, the people from the Sacred Heart Palace, who had come to receive Yin Yang, had also arrived. The leader of this group was Great Elder Lei Qianli, whom Yin Yang had long heard of, but had never met. It was also on this night that two groups of people stealthily entered at almost the same time. Because of this, tonight Night City, which was located at the edge of the continent and belonged to a remote and desolate area, suddenly fell into a strange and unpredictable atmosphere. The next day, an order was issued from the residence of the city lord. By the order of the Eastern Celestial Palace, the Western Holy Palace, and the Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace, from today onwards, everyone in Tonight City, whether they are martial artists or ordinary people, is not allowed to wear a mask. Violators will be punished with death. 3 families will be punished. As the order was issued, the wind and clouds in the sky trembled even more violently. A voice hollered, What is the meaning of this? Everyone knows that our hero has an indecent appearance now, and is using such a method to cover himself. Isn't it too much for the 3 palaces to issue such an order? Are you trying to burn the bridge after crossing it and blaspheme the hero? Another voice said sternly, How can a hero be blasphemed? Not allowing others to wear a mask is an expression of our reverence for the hero, lest someone tries to pass it off as the hero and tarnish the hero's reputation instead. A hero is a hero. No matter how he appears, he is our hero. Judging a person by his appearance is a blasphemy to the hero. This debate lasted for a very, very long time, with everyone sticking to their own views. Ji Lingxi was dressed in white with a black veil over her face, as she stood at the top of the building. Her bright gaze gradually turned as cold as the moon in the sky. A faint murderous intent lingered around her, growing bit by bit. In the room, Shangguan Lingxiu was wiping the sword in her hand gently with a piece of white silk cloth. The sword gleamed coldly, reflecting the murderous intent in Shangguan Lingxiu's eyes. Far away, about 3,000 miles away, another purple-clothed person with a black veil over her face was sprinting towards them. Yin Yang had finally ended his closed-door cultivation. Once he exited, he gazed at the sky from the top of the mountain, only to see blood clouds in front of him, brimming with murderous intent. Yin Yang sighed softly. From the beginning to the end, he had never thought of waving the butcher's knife at these humans. It would be fine if it was one or two, but if there were too many casualties, it would inevitably affect the overall capability of humanity. In spite of this, these people were determined to kill him. If he did not retaliate, he would be the first to die. He could not do anything about it. As Yin Yang waved, a tall mountain rose from the ground behind him. The mountain was thousands of feet tall and stretched for dozens of miles. But there was not a single drop of sand, stone, or soil on the mountain, not even a single plant or tree. It was filled with all sorts of strange metal residue. Although they were residue that Emmy and Yin Yin did not think much of, the texture of the residue was extraordinary. It was at least a few times tougher than ordinary metal. The moment it appeared, it emitted a colorful glow that shot straight into the sky. It was also because of this that an indestructible mountain had appeared outside the city tonight, existing eternally and eternally in the bound of universe. In front of the glow was Yin Yang's graceful figure. The sun shone from his back, dragging a long shadow of the mountain in front of him. Yin Yang moved swiftly in the shadow. It did not take long for Yin Yang to walk out of the shadowy territory. When he took the last step out of the shadow, Yin Yang heaved a soft sigh of relief and stopped, murmuring, "It has nothing to do with glory or hatred. It's only because of life and death. That's all." After saying this, he took another big step forward. At that moment, his whole body was under the sunlight. Then, he did not turn back, flying straight towards the direction of the city tonight. Yin Yang was not moving at a fast pace, but he had not stopped since he had started moving. It was not until Yin Yang's presence reappeared in the world that the world knew of him once more. Tonight, the eyes of many in the city brightened. When the target walked into their field of vision again, it meant that the counterattack should continue. Many people immediately disappeared from their original positions without saying a word. It was unknown if this was a sign that many people would leave their original positions, never to return to their original positions. In one of the courtyards, Dongfang Xingchen, dressed in a snow-white robe, sat in the middle of the room. One could tell that the room he was in was different from the rest. Everywhere he looked was pure white. Not only were the walls snow-white, even the tables and chairs were snow-white. In the entire room, only Dongfang Xingchen's hair and eyes were black. Everything else, including the incense burner in front of him, the ashes in the incense burner, the incense sticks in it, and even the smoke from the burning were all white. It was the most ordinary of houses, but once one entered, it was as if one was in a pure white world. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Dongfang Xingchen raised his head indifferently, not making a sound. A voice came from outside. "Young lord, Yin Yang has appeared. He is currently 3,000 miles south of Tonight City." Dongfang Xingchen still did not reply. "There are already quite a number of people rushing over, they are." The person outside continued to report, word by word. As the trusted aides of Dongfang Xingchen, they were well aware of the temper of their young master. If there was nothing that interested him, it was normal for him to remain silent during the reporting process. That feeling was no different from talking to a wall. The other inheritors have also made their moves. Although their movements are still unclear, it is certain that they have sent out their men. Right now, only our side has not made a move. Young lord, please advise us on what to do next. At this point, the person outside had finished his report and was carefully waiting for Dongfang Xingchen's reply. After a long time, Dongfang Xingchen's voice rang out. "Have the men from the residence of 9 Supremes and the forces from the 9th Supremes made any moves?" "No. These two families have yet to make contact with each other. Based on the information we have received, these two families have yet to make any concrete moves, as if they are waiting to see what happens," Dongfang Xingchen said coldly. "If that is the case, then send out 2 great lords to welcome the return of Supreme Cloud. Supreme Cloud is the hero of the world, the role model of the continent. No matter what, he must not be harmed. Tell them to ensure the safety of sect leader Yin at all costs." Yes. The person outside immediately acknowledged the order and left. Inside the room, Dongfang Xingchen's gaze swept past the rising incense smoke, his clear and cold eyes filled with clarity. The moment he stretched out his hand, the space around him suddenly froze. A slowly rising cloud of smoke froze in the air, forming a unique object that no craftsman in this world would be able to complete. Dongfang Xingchen stretched out his arm, and with a kacha sound, the condensed air that was emitting smoke was easily removed. It was as though he was breaking off a small piece of ice from a large piece of ice. As the cloud of smoke was removed, the black hole behind it appeared in front of him. This piece of space was grabbed by Dongfang Xingchen, just like that, placed in front of his eyes, and observed it carefully. After a while he muttered to himself, suddenly rising into the sky without any foundation. How long can it last? Clap! Two slender fingers suddenly moved, and the piece of condensed air that had been plucked out from the space returned to its original position. It was seamless, without the slightest flaw. Then, the incense continued to burn, and the smoke continued to rise according to its original trajectory, as if nothing had happened at all, from the beginning to the end. Only Dongfang Xingchen had created such a miraculous scene. Only he had seen it, only he had seen it, and only he had seen it. Yet with a single sentence from him, it was the same as before. Yunyang had not even walked more than 100 miles when he heard someone call out sternly, "Is that the bound of Universe Supreme Cloud, Lord Yunyang, in front?" Yunyang's eyes behind his mask looked up, and focused on the void in front of him. The void shattered like a painting, and 3 silhouettes appeared from it. With a whoosh, they landed several hundred feet in front of Yunyang. 3 first-level pinnacle great lords. Yunyang muttered to himself in his heart. As the 3 of them landed, they bowed in unison. Bound of Universes Shui Wuhan, Shui Wubua, and Shui Wubing pay our respects to Lord Supreme Cloud. We thank Lord Supreme Cloud for your contribution to the Bound of Universe. The 3 of us are extremely grateful to you. Please accept our bow. Yunyang did not make any move, only staring at the 3 of them indifferently. He could clearly feel the murderous intent emanating from the trio. So how could he be so rash as to exchange pleasantries with them? Seeing that they had bowed deeply, he then said, "Dispense with the formalities." The 3 great lords on the other side choked upon hearing his words. Before they came, they had thought about how Yunyang would react. Whether it was a polite conversation, ignoring him and leaving, or even a sudden attack, they all had their own ways of dealing with him. Yet, what the hell was this dispense with the formalities? Why was this child so arrogant? Even if he was the newly promoted hero of the Bound of Universe, and was worthy of such an honor, did he still have any sense of propriety or shame? Then, Yunyang asked in a seemingly curious manner, "All 3 of you have the surname Shui. Are you from the same family? Are you all of the same generation?" The trio grew even more displeased as they snorted coldly with a straight face. "So what?" However, Yunyang suddenly asked, "May I ask if the 3 of you have heard of the name Shui Wuin? Is he from the same source as the 3 of you?" Yunyang had always known that the Tianxian continent and the Bound of Universe were closely related. Whether it was the Lei family of his 6th brother, the god of wine, Feng Xiang'a, or the demonic phoenix sovereign related to Mr. Nian, or the secret of bones of God, when he suddenly heard 3 top-notch cultivators with the surname Shui, he subconsciously linked them to his old subordinate in the Tianxian continent, Shui Wuin. "Never heard of him," the trio answered in unison, their expressions turning even more sour. Yunyang's eyes behind the mask grew colder and clearer as he said, "I wonder if the 3 of you have come today to teach me anything?" Shui Wuhan snorted and said loudly, "We have come today to seek guidance from Lord Supreme Cloud on 2 matters." As they spoke, the sound of air being sliced could be heard as another 7 to 8 experts arrived. The first matter is, of course, to see Lord Supreme Cloud. As a part of the human race, we should show our respect and bow to Lord Supreme Cloud for his great contribution. As for the second matter, it is a personal matter. Shui Wubua continued. Due to fate, the 3 of us brothers stepped into the path of cultivation and climbed to the pinnacle of it. We didn't want to waste this ability, so we left our hometown and lived alone in the Bloody Soul Mountain. It has been more than 7,000 years since then. The three of us brothers have not stepped into the world for a long time, but the bloodline of the Shui family still flows in our veins. We have been passed down for thousands of years and have become a great family. However, we heard that sect leader Yin had uprooted our family 3 to 4 years ago in order to expand the sect's territory. It is a pity that only 3 of us survived out of the tens of thousands of people in the Shui family. I still have a headache after taking medicine for a few days. I want to get a drip, but everyone is advising me not to. Chapter 1363. Shui Wubo glared at Yin Yang and said loudly, "I am Shui Wubo of the Bound of Universe. May I ask Lord Supreme Cloud, were you the one who did this? Or was it someone else who framed you?" The moment he said this, the crowd became agitated. Killing an entire family was a taboo in the martial world, no matter where it was. Everyone looked at Yin Yang, waiting for his reply. At this moment, the atmosphere was eerily silent, as though the trees were waiting for the rain to fall. Yin Yang sighed in his heart. Everyone's standpoints were different. If you want to kill me, why don't you fight me directly? Why do you have to find excuses in such a roundabout manner? Yin Yang answered weakly. If I say that I didn't do it, and that someone really framed me, would you believe me? Shui Wubo said word by word. How willing I am to believe that you are innocent, and that you were framed by someone else. However, there are witnesses and material evidence, so how can you frame me? This blood debt is as vast as the ocean. Yin Yang, you claim to be the role model of the human race, but you dare not admit what you have done. What is this? Do you think that you can make up for your sins with just a moment of merit? The expressions of the surrounding crowd became even more strange, and the sounds of discussion could be heard. Yin Yang sighed softly. Witnesses and material evidence are just different people's opinions. What you insist on is to collect this so-called blood debt, so it doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. Is that what you mean? Shui Wuhan snorted. With the blood debt of clan annihilation before us, I hope that Lord Supreme Cloud can give us an explanation. Yin Yang's expression was cold. How do you want me to explain? Do you really want to be irreconcilable enemies? The 3 of us only wished to learn a thing or two from Lord Supreme Cloud. The 3 brothers stood in a straight line, each holding a long sword. Facing Yin Yang, it was Shui Wubo who spoke. The rules of the martial world are that the victor is the king. If the 3 of us are defeated, we naturally have nothing to say, and will leave immediately. The blood debt of our clan will be written off. However, if Lord Supreme Cloud is defeated, then the blood debt of our tens of thousands of clansmen will have to be repaid by Lord Supreme Cloud. Ha ha ha! Suddenly, Yin Yang guffawed into the sky. It was a hearty laugh that lasted for a long time. Interesting, interesting, truly interesting. Shui Wuhan's face slowly turned fierce and ruthless. Lord Supreme Cloud, why are you laughing? Yin Yang guffawed, growing increasingly amused. I said I didn't do it, but you guys don't believe me. I find this amusing. Can't I laugh at such a funny thing? Shui Wuhan's face instantly turned ashen. You dare to do it, but you don't dare admit it. Just because you don't admit it, you can pretend it didn't happen? Yes, I did it. I did all of this. Yin Yang laughed and said, why wouldn't I admit it? Not only was your family annihilated by me, but your descendants were also killed by me. Your bloodline was severed by me, including all 18 generations of your ancestors. All of them died under my saber, without exception. There were more and more onlookers. Everyone's expression changed when they heard what Yin Yang had said. No one had expected Yin Yang to say such a thing. Yin Yang was still laughing maniacally. Suddenly, he rose into the air and let out a long howl. From now on, whoever wants to kill me, whoever harbors ill intentions towards me, whoever wants to find trouble with me, just come. You guys really don't have to make up any excuses. Is there any meaning to the so-called moral high ground? I've thought of all the excuses you need, and I've acknowledged them all. Your families were annihilated by me, and your ancestors were all killed by me. If you want to fight, let's fight. Yin Yang's howl shook the heavens. Is there any meaning in finding these bullsh*t excuses? Is there no reason to fight in the bound of universe's martial world? Today I'll start with the three Shui brothers. I'd like to see how many sects of saints I, Yin Yang, have annihilated, and how many seeds of experts I've killed. I, the demon king of exterminating sects. Am I truly a lunatic? Hearing Yin Yang's words, not only did Shui Wubo and the other two's faces turn pale, the onlookers also had an interesting expression on their faces. What else could they do? They were playing cards with others, but they had just played one card, and the other party had flipped the table right away. This was equivalent to tearing down everyone's fig leaf in the most blatant way possible. Whether it was themselves or the onlookers, everyone was clear. What hatred was there for annihilation? The so-called blood feud of the mountains and seas was just an excuse to attack. To Yin Yang, no reason was important or meaningful, but to them, it was important and indispensable. What if the masters of the three heavenly palaces came back to find trouble with them? Their clansmen had been annihilated, so what if the other party was a hero of the human race? In order to make it seem real, they would even sacrifice their own clansmen. They would really slaughter them, and put the blame on Yin Yang, to prove that they weren't fighting recklessly. Look, my clansmen, my bloodline, my descendants have all been annihilated. But now, Yin Yang had admitted everything. Not only did he kill your descendants, even your ancestors were killed by me. Whoever wants to find trouble with me next, don't bother finding excuses, I'll admit it all. Just come and kill me. However, Yin Yang's actions had caused everyone to look sheepish. It's good that you admit it. Shui Wuhan, who was the first to bear the brunt of the attack, shouted without a care in the world. An eye for an eye, an eye for an eye. The blood feud of annihilation is irreconcilable. Yin Yang, even if you're the continent's hero, this family feud. Yin Yang cut him off cleanly once again. Where did you get so much nonsense from? Are you going to fight or not? Don't you want revenge? Don't you want to be irreconcilable? I'll fulfill your wish. Before his words echoed in the air, the divine edge flashed in Yin Yang's hand. With a wave of his hand, a majestic saber light formed, for to 500 feet long, and swept over. Yin Yang had actually made the first move. Shui Wuhan and the other two were startled and hastily dodged. At the same time, they all had the same thought. Something was wrong with this situation. A normal situation should be, we'd say a bunch of things about our respect for Yin Yang, then talk about our family's 10,000 years of heritage. Then our family would be annihilated in the hands of a hero. Helpless, we'd come here to settle things with Lord Supreme Cloud. Then, we'd accidentally slip up in the process. Then, we'd regret it, we'd repent. We'd immediately swear to guard the bloody soul mountain for eternity, never to leave it ever again. To atone for our sins, shouldn't a normal development be like this? Why did everything change in such a short time? Were the victims' families? Why is it that the murderer Yin Yang has come charging over so aggressively before the victims have even made a move? This isn't right, this isn't right at all. Chapter 1364. There were not many spectators around, but none of them were weaklings. However, when Yin Yang struck out with his saber, they were all dumbfounded. The reason was not only because Yin Yang's sudden strike was unexpected, but because although it looked like he was attacking the three Shui brothers, the actual direction of the saber was like a billowing saber light that swept through the surroundings, covering thousands of feet of space. In other words, even the spectators around them were within the range of the saber light. They were in danger of being attacked at every turn. Faced with such a threatening saber energy, the crowd retreated in unison. A Saint Lord vaguely felt that something was amiss. Lifting his head to look, he felt an inexplicable force being drawn down. Then, he saw a saber light rise into the sky like a soaring dragon. Clang, clang, clang. A series of soft collisions could be heard. Amidst the billowing dust, muffled noises could be heard continuously. It was obvious that an intense battle was taking place. When the dust gradually dissipated, everyone focused their eyes and looked over, but what they saw shocked them. The three Shui brothers were in a triangular formation, each wielding their swords and circling Yin Yang from three different directions. The surging sword light seemed to have formed an airtight barrel. It was obvious that the trio's sword techniques were extremely dense, compressing the space that Yun-Yang could evade to the greatest extent. In spite of this, Yun-Yang, who was surrounded by them, did not look like he was clumsy at all. Although he was masked, he was still tall and graceful. The saber in his hand was nimble and agile. It looked like a casual swing was enough to overwhelm the three Shui brothers and cause them to panic. It had only been a few breaths' time since the start of the battle, but the combined attack of the three Saint Lords had actually put them at a disadvantage despite outnumbering him. This situation was rather appalling. It had not even been 10 breaths' time, which was just a few blinks of an eye. Among the spectators, an elder dressed in a green robe murmured, "The three Shui brothers are telepathic, and they're adept at working together to surround each other. Their combined combat power far exceeds that of an ordinary Saint Lord of the same level. How did the situation get out of hand? Did they go easy on him? That Lord Supreme Cloud's techniques aren't all that exquisite. They're far from what the rumors say." Another chubby man rubbed his chin. "I say, old Lu, are you blind? Take a closer look at the saber will contained within. Supreme Cloud's saber will is directed at the flaws that could kill the Shui brothers. He doesn't have to unleash all his moves. His saber will is only a split second away, and he's already at the upper hand. The three Shui brothers are more than just one move away. It's not surprising that they're at a disadvantage." Old Lu said angrily, "How can I not see that? However, Supreme Cloud's cultivation base is only about the same as the three of them. To solve this situation, all we have to do is to change our tactics and adapt to the local conditions. After all, it's 3 against 1, and we have far more resources than our opponents. How come I can't get away like this?" The short and fat man came to his senses immediately. Not bad, not bad. That's how it should be." He focused all his attention on the battle, and his brows were still furrowed. He realized that the situation of the Shui brothers was getting worse and worse. The scene that the old man had predicted did not appear. The three of them continued to swing their swords, sword energy dancing in the air. Countless beams of sword energy seeped out from the battlefield, slicing the surrounding void into nothingness. It was a clear indication that the trio's cultivation base was extraordinary, and they were giving it their all in this battle, determined to kill Yun-Yang. In spite of this, there were more sword energy in the battlefield, but none of them were effective and could unleash the power they should. Something's not right. Not good. Not good. As the battle continued and the situation changed, not only old Lu, but the others could see the subtle change in the situation as well. It was the exact opposite of what they had expected. It was not just the beginning that the Shui brothers were at a disadvantage. They were destined to lose right from the start. They could not even get away now. All of them were martial experts. Recalling Yun-Yang's initial strike that seemed to be a way to vent his anger, the strike that had forced everyone away, the onlookers felt a chill run down their spines. It turned out that they had been plotting since then, perhaps even earlier than that. I understand now. A second-level pinnacle Saint Lord with the highest cultivation base heaved a long sigh. What an ingenious plan. From the moment the Shui brothers spoke up, before they even showed themselves, they've already started plotting. It's fine if they're friends, but if they're enemies, they're destined to lose at that moment. As he spoke, everyone recalled the strike. The strike looked simple and straightforward, unable to cause any harm to the crowd. However, when the saber wind swirled, it had already formed a layer of encirclement from the outside to the inside. Then, the saber energy soared into the sky, as if it was connected to some prearranged aura. Then, as Yun-Yang swung his saber again, it combined with the saber energy that he had released earlier. It was equivalent to creating a unique aura on the battlefield at the start of the battle, one that was completely beneficial to Yun-Yang. The effect of constructing this aura was peculiar. Under Yun-Yang's intentional prearrangement, it had become a perfect cycle. As the cycle continued, it would selectively block the sword energy unleashed by the Shui brothers. If the sword energy did not pose a threat to Yun-Yang, it would allow it to leak out freely. If it did, it would weaken and divert the sword energy to be used by Yun-Yang. In other words, a large portion of the countless sword energy unleashed by the Shui brothers had leaked out of the battlefield, while the rest were either weakened or converted to yin-yang, all under the control of yin-yang's divine edge. This also meant that as the battle continued, the attacks from the Shui brothers, who seemed to be outnumbered, were no threat to yin-yang at all. In addition, a portion of their attacks would be used by yin-yang to attack them. It was no different from them joining forces with yin-yang to attack themselves. Moreover, they had fallen into such a situation from the very beginning. Even though the Shui brothers were Saint Lords and were adept at joint attacks, they were still unable to fight against such a situation. They were only putting up a stubborn resistance and holding on. It was only now that the spectators realized what was going on. It was because yin-yang's technique was unique. Other than yin-yang's divine edge, the others, even if they were saint-level cultivators, would not be able to do so. As the situation of the battle gradually became clearer, the crowd finally realized the truth. All of them were drenched in cold sweat, their hearts breaking out in cold sweat. How pitiful, to be tricked right from the start. Feng Lingtian said. Today, my wife's bestie came over and talked about losing weight during this period of time. I listened from the side, and both of them were chatting excitedly. My bestie asked me, "Old Zhang, guess how much weight I've lost?" I took a look and asked, "Do you guys have some misunderstanding about the word thin? I've been beaten up." Chapter 1365. It's so tragic, the three Shui brothers. That's right. They fell into the trap before they even attacked. When they attacked, they realized that the trap would actually grow with the strength of their attacks. The stronger their attacks, the higher the possibility of the trap killing them. Yet they couldn't stop because once they did, they'd die immediately. The opponent's saber is obviously not to be trifled with. Your father is sweating cold sweat. Luckily, the Shui brothers attacked first. If it were me, I'd have fallen into the trap as well. If it were you, you'd most likely be dead. The three Shui brothers attacked together, both offensively and defensively. Their defense is no weaker than a second-level Saint King. It's because of this characteristic that they can still hold on until now. If it were you, do you really have the confidence to hold on for so long? That makes sense. If it were someone else, they might not be able to do it. Still, how do you think the Shui brothers are feeling now? I'm really curious. Pfft, you gloating fellow. You should have gone first back then. It had to be said that the Shui brothers' feelings right now could not be described with words. After so many years of cultivation, this was the first time they felt like crying. Didn't you tell us that this Supreme Cloud is only a third-level Saint King? Didn't you tell us that his cultivation would stop at the half-step Saint Monarch realm at the very most? The three of us came here in high spirits, but the moment we attacked, we encountered a sinkhole. We really encountered a sinkhole the moment we attacked. And we fell into it. When they attacked just now, the three of them wielded their swords at the same time. The sword light rained down like a thunderstorm, while the other party retaliated with an avalanche of saber light. Then, the situation became strange. They lost control, and were completely on the defensive. None of the thousands of sword energies that they had shot out were effective. After all, Yin Yang was famous, and the three brothers did not expect to be able to take him down with a single strike. However, it was understandable that most of the sword energies that the three of them had shot out did not hit their target and dissipated. But what about the rest? They could have touched Yin Yang. It was the part of the sword energy that had come into contact with Yin Yang that changed. It was first weakened and then deflected. It was understandable. Which cultivator who had reached an advanced level did not have a secret skill to deflect the attack and deflect it? How could the sword energy that had been weakened and deflected be used by Yin Yang instead? With just a sweep of his opponent's saber energy, the sword energy had become his. Then, the sword energy had turned around and attacked him. This was too strange, wasn't it? Back then, when the battle had just begun, it was not as if the three of them had no chance to escape when they saw such a strange phenomenon. As long as they retreated at the risk of being slightly injured, the most Yin Yang could do was to injure one of them severely with the help of the divine edge. The problem was that the three of them, who were telepathically connected, had the same thought. Such a phenomenon could not last long. At most, some arcane skill that Yun-Yang had cast could only be effective for a short while. Their actual abilities were far above him. As long as they could hold on for a little longer, it would be enough to exhaust the other party to death. Therefore, the three of them did not think of retreating. Instead, they swung their swords and attacked again. Of course, they also used 30% of their power to protect themselves. After all, Yun-Yang's counterattack contained part of his and their sword energy. The lethality was not to be underestimated. Then, the other party's saber light struck again, beginning the hellish cycle. The three brothers felt like they were having a nightmare that would never end. With an unimaginably marvelous slash, it attacked the three of us at the same time. The three of us retaliated at the same time. Our sword energy swept across the sky, dispelling Yun-Yang's attack. However, the opponent's attacks came wave after wave, like the Yangtze River and the sea, seemingly endless. Each wave of attack contained a portion of the three of us sword energy. Furthermore, the power of each attack was stronger than the one before. After 3 rounds of battle, Yun-Yang's attack was so strong that it was enough to kill any one of the three of them. Seeing that they were out of luck, the three of them were unwilling to give up and continued to fight with all their might. Although Yun-Yang's attack was strong, it was not enough to kill all 3 of them at the same time. This gave the 3 of them some leeway, as they continued to hold on bitterly. This was the dire situation that the 3 Shui brothers were in right now. Fighting and holding on bitterly. It was true that they had started fighting after the first 3 rounds of battle. They did not even dare to use their swords to defend themselves, unless they had no other choice. If they used their swords again, it would be equivalent to increasing the other party's chances of killing them. However, if they did not use their swords and the other party continued to control the saber wind and sword energy to attack them, they would have to deal with it. Once they dealt with it, even if they could overcome this wave of attacks, they would still be adding to the other party's saber wind and sword energy. The 3 brothers were on the verge of tears. How could there be such a strange battle in this world? Damn it! Whether you were a hero or a saint, personal grudges would always be an eternal topic in the martial world. After making the arrangements, the 3 of them set off without hesitation. They felt that the reason they used to provoke Yun-Yang was completely valid. Even if it was fabricated, it would be fine as long as they made it true. Even if you are a hero of the world, an unparalleled talent, you and I have a blood feud. Could I give up on the blood feud of my family's annihilation just because you became a hero? There was no such rule. With this as a basis, even if the masters of the 3 heavenly palaces came to question them afterwards, it was still valid and justifiable. I respect heroes, but before a hero becomes a hero, he might not be completely clean. Should I give up on the blood feud of my family? There's no such logic. At the end of the day, everyone was still a martial world man. Such a simple logic was the same everywhere. However, after coming here and fighting, they realized they had been in closed-door cultivation for 3,000 years and hadn't emerged. Why did they fall into such a huge pit the moment they came out? The 3 brothers' minds were filled with bitterness. The target's cultivation base and ability, that the information provided to us were not like this, alright? What happened to the promised half-step Saint Lord? What happened to the target being wary of the power of law? What happened to the cultivation base being weak, and nothing to be afraid of? This was obviously a masterful, cunning pinnacle expert. He was a superb expert who could take down the 3 of us at the same time. Before both sides officially came into contact, he had already predicted the enemy's moves and set up a unique aura. Before he could finish his sentence, a whirlwind of saber energy that engulfed the entire place had activated it. Such a sudden change was completely unaware that the 3 brothers, who had been fighting for their entire lives, had stepped into a trap of death. With such a situation, it could almost be said that other than the 3 of them taking the initiative when they went forward to provoke and find excuses, they were completely passive in other aspects, completely being toyed with by the other party. From the initial fear that Yun-Yang would run away, the 3 of them could no longer escape now. The situation had worsened to a certain extent. The spectators gradually realized that Shui Wuhan and the other two brothers were having a hard time dealing with the situation and were at a complete disadvantage. What they did not know was that Shui Wuhan and the other two brothers, who were in the fray, knew that the situation was far from good. A huge vortex had formed in the middle of the battle, a vortex that contained a terrifying power. Shui Wuhan knew very well that if any one of the three brothers were to face this vortex alone, the best outcome would be the destruction of their physical bodies and the need to be reincarnated. Furthermore, Yun Yang was still swinging his saber over and over again, feeding the vortex bit by bit. Behind the mask, his clear eyes were filled with chilliness. Since the start of the battle, from the beginning to the end, Yun Yang had not uttered a single word. Only his murderous aura was growing thicker. However, Yun Yang, who had the upper hand, could remain silent, but if the three of them did not speak, they would really be doomed. At this moment, the three brothers did not dare to stop for even a moment. Shui Wuhan, who had swiftly swept past with another wave of energy, said loudly, "Lord Supreme Cloud, today's matter is merely a dispute of personal feelings. Since we've already exchanged blows, the three of us think that Lord Supreme Cloud is not the kind of heartless person who would willfully slaughter the people. Perhaps there's some misunderstanding in this matter." As soon as the words left his mouth, the surrounding crowd was dumbfounded and tongue-tied. What a mouth you have. You thought you had the other party in the bag earlier, but now you've thrown all sorts of shit at him. Now that you feel like you're about to die and are about to be in trouble, you've actually turned it into a misunderstanding? How could you even think of saying that? However, with the cultivation base of Shui Wuhan and the other two brothers, such words were no different from admitting defeat and begging for mercy. While everyone was filled with disdain, they were also looking forward to how Yin Yang would answer this. Everyone was very curious about the way this Bound of Universe's role model, the hero of the human race, conducted himself. Today, he had finally appeared, but was met with such an ambush almost immediately. What would he choose? Would he choose to keep the peace and take a step back? After all, the other party was also the backbone of the human race. Amidst the saber light, Yin Yang's purple robes fluttered rapidly amidst the saber and sword, but his voice was steady and cold. "What misunderstanding? Your descendants were all killed by me. Your ancestors were all killed by me as well. You found the right person to look for me. This is a blood feud with Dai Qingtian. How can there be a misunderstanding?" The Shui brothers almost vomited blood. Heavens and earth, where did our descendants come from for you to kill? If our ancestors were really killed by you, where did we come from? Lord Supreme Cloud. Shui Wubo called out loudly. The martial world walks the path of the martial world. A life for a life, a debt for a debt. This is the justice of the world. I've long been aware of this. Yin Yang's indifferent voice drifted over. In fact, after I've wiped out your bloodline and killed all 18 generations of your ancestors, I've been searching for you all. Evil must be eradicated, the roots must be uprooted. Yin Yang's eyes were cold. The grudges of the martial world have always been like this. No one can say anything about me. Is this how it should be? Waves of indignation rose in the hearts of the three Shui brothers. What Yin Yang had said was their plan, their excuse. Now that Yin Yang had taken it all in, giving them a taste of their own medicine, they were rendered speechless and speechless. Among the surrounding experts, there was someone who knew the three Shui brothers. A long sigh was heard. Lord Supreme Cloud, you're the hero of the Bound of Universe. You're a magnanimous man. Since Boss Shui has already said that it's a misunderstanding, it means that the brothers have slapped themselves. Killing them is but a small matter. Why don't you forgive them? This old man can guarantee that the three of them won't find trouble with you anymore. Please have mercy, Lord Supreme Cloud. Yin Yang's voice was indifferent. Who are you? Why didn't they speak up for me when they attacked me? Chapter 1366. What Yin Yang meant was, you didn't speak up for me just now, but you're speaking up for them now. Who do you think you are? The man's voice faltered. Yin Yang's voice was indifferent. The one who spoke. May I ask if any of your bloodline descendants have died in my hands? How many have died? Have they all perished? The man's face turned purple. No, no. My descendants have nothing to do with Lord Supreme Cloud. There's no grudge between us. So, 18 generations of your ancestors have died in my hands. Yin Yang continued to ask, his voice mocking. If there's no grudge between us, then please shut up. Otherwise, I'll take it that you're provoking me and have ill intentions towards me. The man shut his mouth and did not say another word. Although he knew the Shui brothers, they were at most acquaintances who nodded at each other. Since they were on the same side now, he felt sympathetic towards them. Therefore, he tried his best to speak up for them under such circumstances. However, if he were to bring trouble upon himself and fight Supreme Cloud to the death, he could not do so. Shui Wuhan's face was filled with grief and indignation. Lord Supreme Cloud is determined to die. Can I be certain that you won't let anyone who comes to kill you off along the way? You'll kill them all without mercy? Yin Yang's voice was indifferent. That's right. And it's not just this journey. Since I started roaming the martial world until now, I've never shown mercy to anyone who's interested in my life. Also, a mocking glint flashed across Yin Yang's eyes. For those whose bloodlines and ancestors have been wiped out by me, I'll exterminate them all the more. I won't let any of you escape. Just as his voice trailed off, the saber light and sword energy converged to form a formidable force. It was unstoppable and unstoppable. The spectators around could see that the mighty force was about to descend. The ones closest to them had already flown tens of thousands of feet into the sky. No one dared to face it head-on. Shui Wuhan let out a long howl. Second and third brother, leave. Leave this whirlpool, I'll hold them off. Shui Wubo and Shui Wubbing screamed. Big brother, go. The three brothers were well aware of the current situation. With death at hand, it was impossible for all three of them to escape unscathed. At most, only two of them would be able to escape. As for the one who stayed behind, he would have no other choice but to perish. On the other hand, after losing the treasured raft that was the human body, even if one's soul didn't perish, it would require an extremely long period of time to cultivate again. Moreover, the path forward would definitely be much more difficult, and there was an extremely high possibility that one would die prematurely midway and be unable to recover on their path of cultivation. This was a huge risk, but now, he had no choice but to risk it. Now that the situation had reached such a critical juncture, the best outcome would be for one of them to die. In other words, one of the three brothers would be sacrificed, and the other two would be able to escape alive. Furthermore, Boss's words had pushed the limits of his power to the limit. This battle was already irreversible, proving that Boss was willing to sacrifice himself in exchange for the lives of the other two. How could the two of them bear to part with their tens of thousands of years of brotherly love? Now isn't the time to decline. If we don't make a decision now, none of us will be able to leave. Shui Wuhan was extremely anxious. She shouted, "This Supreme Cloud is vicious and merciless. His vicious heart is clear. Hurry!" He was very clear that Yin Yang's killing intent was still strong and was increasing. Similarly, the saber aura and sword intent that were being controlled by the other party had already reached a level that could kill a Saint Monarch expert. If they were to delay any longer, it would be meaningless even if they were to risk their lives. The reason why the other party didn't activate it was probably because Yin Yang wanted to kill the three of them in one go. They couldn't sit still and wait for death, so they could only risk their lives and try their best to preserve the lives of the other two brothers. The three brothers conversed rapidly as they flew. At this moment, they were no longer afraid of being heard by others, or even by Yin Yang. This was a matter of life and death, and danger was just a matter of seconds. Wait for me to perish, try to take away the remnant of my soul. Shui Wuhan let out a long howl, and an extremely bright radiance shone from his body, illuminating the 9 heavens and brightening the universe. Big brother! The other two cried out in pain. Go! Shui Wuhan's entire body was already completely immersed in the sword light, as he charged towards the area controlled by Yin Yang's saber light and sword intent, without any hesitation. Shui Wubo and Shui Wubbing's faces were filled with grief, but they still managed to swing their swords with all their might before retreating swiftly, trying their best to escape from the range of the whirlpool. This was an opportunity that their big brother had created with his life on the line, so they couldn't let it go. If they missed it, their big brother would really die with everlasting regret. At the same time, Shui Wuhan's ultimate sword strike that contained his lifetime's worth of cultivation base smashed against the whirlpool. Yun Yang snorted coldly, and the saber light and sword intent that he had gathered and controlled dispersed significantly. More importantly, the mystical charm of heaven and earth being one with the universe had disappeared instantly. Shui Wuhan's final attack, along with his sword, forcefully charged into the saber light and sword intent with a frenzied momentum. With a loud explosion, countless saber lights and sword auras were detonated. The heavens and earth shook, and the heaven and earth overturned. Shui Wuhan, who was at the center of the explosion, could clearly feel that his body, which he had cultivated and refined for countless years, was being torn apart bit by bit and destroyed. I really can't block it. Am I really going to die? But my two brothers are safe, aren't they? When he was surrounded by the whirlpool that was almost equivalent to a saint-level force, he tried his best to open his eyes, hoping that he could see that the opportunity that he had exchanged his life for was not lost. However, he saw the other two whirlpools that were also filled with countless saber light and sword intent. Like a tornado that could devour the heavens, they came crashing down and enveloped Shui Wubo and Shui Wubing's bodies. How could this be? This was Shui Wuhan's last thought. He only had time to see the indescribable grief and extreme shock in his two brothers' eyes before they were engulfed by the saber light and sword intent whirlpool. The next moment it was all gone. At this point, there were already dozens of people spectating the battle. However, he remained silent as he observed the commotion in the field. Just as Shui Wuhan dashed out and entered the saber light, the dazzling saber light and the majestic sword light suddenly split into three, each taking their own course and enveloping the three Shui brothers mysteriously. Then, Yun Yang pulled himself out and chased after their souls with 3 consecutive slashes. Yes, this was the true Soul 3 Saber Chaser. 3 consecutive reincarnation under Saber. Shui Wuhan and the other 2 Saint Lords were slashed into soul form at the same time. Just as their souls appeared, a saber light that was infused with the power of reincarnation chased after them. Their souls were no longer there, not a single trace of them left. After a while, the sky returned to its usual tranquil state. There was also silence. There was nothing else. Only Yun Yang, who was wearing a mask, was left standing proudly in the air. For a long time, the surroundings were still silent. Many of the world's pinnacle experts who were watching the battle from the outside still dared not believe that Shui Wuhan and the other 2 Saint Lords had truly perished, their souls no longer remaining. They were still checking again and again, but the only thing they could find was the faint traces of a great battle floating in the air. This meant that the 3 monarchs had truly disappeared. Not only that, their bodies and souls were completely destroyed, they were beyond redemption. Looking at the masked man hovering in the air again, everyone had the same thought. The Saint Lord was the most powerful, a perfect killing trap. Yun Yang's gaze swept across the faces of these people, his gaze gentle and cold. He spoke in a composed manner. The 3 Shui brothers said that I have a bloodline grudge with them, a grudge of slaughtering my clansmen. They said that they would settle it in the martial world's way, the victor being the king. No matter how many twists and turns there are, all grudges and gratitude will be settled in a single battle. Now the 3 Shui brothers are dead. This matter shall end here. The cause and effect shall cease to exist. Yin Yang said faintly. I wonder if there is anyone here who has a grudge against me? Anyone who has a grudge? Please show yourself and let us settle this here and now. Yin Yang paused and said with a smile. One has no choice in the martial world. No one knows when someone who is killed with a single slash might be the descendant of some peerless expert. This is only a matter of luck, but it has nothing to do with the bigger picture, much less the grand scheme. I'll ask one last time here. If there is anyone who has a grudge against me, feel free to step forward. We'll settle it in the martial world's way. However, if no one steps forward, I won't keep you company. I'm going on my way. Once Yun Yang's words left his mouth, the crowd seemed to have woken up from a dream. Immediately someone moved. With a soft whooshing sound, a few people landed. Their leader was clad in a white robe. He was the first to speak. This old man is Chung Pingyu of the East Celestial Palace. Greetings, Lord Supreme Cloud. The grandson of King Qin of the West Heaven Holy Palace greets Lord Supreme Cloud. The crowd greeted him. We are here on the orders of the lords of the three celestial palaces to welcome Lord Supreme Cloud into Jinshao City. Two of them took a step forward and said, Our East Celestial Palace's young palace lord, Dongfang Xingqian, was enraged when he heard that someone had impersonated and tried to assassinate Lord Supreme Cloud. He has already rushed to Jinshao City personally, and has given his subordinates a death order to ensure Lord Supreme Cloud's safety no matter the cost. Lord Supreme Cloud, please. As the crowd started to speak, the scene became chaotic. Although it was not to the extent where everyone was talking at once, it was still noisy. Yun Yang frowned slightly and glanced around. He did not say anything in response, but an indescribable aura emanated from him, dominating the entire place. Under this indescribable imposing aura, everyone shut up successively, and a subtle feeling arose in their hearts in unison. It was probably because being in such a mess before this existence was unbecoming, and it was truly beneath one's status and value. After witnessing the battle just now, they no longer had any doubts about Yun Yang's ability as a top-notch saint. They were even more certain that Yun Yang had purposely let them witness the entire battle. If not, he would have long moved the battlefield to some unknown place with his ability. There would not have been such a commotion. Clap, clap, clap. A series of crisp claps could be heard. The crowd looked towards the source of the sound and saw the newcomer clapping his hands as he sauntered over. He said with a smile, Lord Supreme Cloud's reputation is well-deserved indeed. You live up to your reputation. Now that I've seen you today, I'm truly impressed. Good skill, good saber skill, good scheming, good planning, and good decisiveness. What's even more admirable? Yun Yang lifted his head to look, only to see a young man dressed in white walking over slowly. He was tall, handsome, and carried himself elegantly. He walked towards Yun Yang with a grin. I'm truly impressed. I'm utterly convinced. Lord Supreme Cloud, I've never seen anyone fight like this before. It's like I've discovered a whole new world. Please accept my respect for this. As he spoke, he actually bowed to the ground, giving Yun Yang a deep bow. Yun Yang frowned and asked in surprise, You are? Among the crowd, someone exclaimed in surprise, Young Lord? Why are you here? The one who was addressed as Young Lord rolled his eyes and said, If I didn't come, how could I have watched such an exciting battle? He was still exclaiming in admiration, as if he was still savoring the short battle just now. It was as if the battle just now was the highlight to him, one that he could savor endlessly. Everything else was insignificant. Young Lord. Yun Yang's gaze focused on the young man in front of him. The person who had spoken just now had claimed to be from the Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace. Was this young man the young lord of the Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace? Putting everything else aside, the way he pretended to be was quite accomplished. Lord Supreme Cloud's ability is even more well known. You've already reached the pinnacle of perfection, transcending mortality and entering sainthood. However, your intelligence and intelligence are even more admirable. Also, your decisiveness and decisiveness are nothing short of astounding. The young man bowed elegantly. Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace's Beigong Wushuang greets Lord Supreme Cloud. Previously, the crowd had been standing together in a mess, but since Beigong Wushuang's appearance, the three camps were immediately separated into distinct lines. Young Lord Beigong. Yun Yang nodded in greeting. Meeting this man for the first time, Yun Yang did not feel any kindness, but he did not feel any hostility either. Instead, the feeling of amazement was vividly displayed in this young lord of Beigong's eyes. The battle just now is enough to enter the bound of universe's martial arts curriculum, if there is such a curriculum. Beigong Wushuang was still full of praise as he shook his head and sighed. What truly astounds me the most is, only by deducing the outcome of the battle can we deduce this situation. If we really deduce it beforehand, It's impossible to deduce the current situation, let alone break it. Lord Supreme Cloud's move is truly impressive. Yin Yang glanced at Beigong Wushuang again. This fellow's eyes were rather sharp, pointing straight to the crux of the matter. Indeed, the most crucial point of the battle just now was that Yin Yang had not used his trump card at all, nor had he revealed too much of his ability. Yet the three Saint Lords had all been tricked to death. This kind of statement, and this kind of situation seemed very inconceivable. But when one looked at it in reverse, it seemed all too normal and reasonable. When Yin Yang had been sprinting along the road, he had already set up a sensing saber energy hidden in the air. When the Shui brothers had provoked him, the mental control had immediately set up the hidden saber energy into a state of circulation. Later, when the saber had struck, the circulation had been completely activated. Only then could the saber wind and sword energy be controlled by him, and he could even control them freely. After that, it was the third style of the divine edge, the second style, reincarnation under saber. Or rather, Yin Yang had singled out this style and successfully constructed a reincarnation. A reincarnation of death that had successfully sent three Saint Lords to their graves. This had been a death trap from the very beginning. Alright, time to rest and prepare to explode. Chapter 1367. Not only did the Shui brothers want to kill Yin Yang, but Yin Yang also intended to use the lives of such high-level experts to establish his authority. In summary, the final conclusion was that there was no solution to this trap. Yin Yang had spent a great deal of effort in planning to set up this ambush. Unless a saint-level expert arrived and forcefully interfered with the rules, even if it was a third-grade Saint Monarch pinnacle, it would be an understatement to say that it was highly unlikely for him to survive if he fell into this ambush based on the power Yin Yang had displayed so far. Moreover, Yin Yang's cultivation base was at least a level higher than any of the three. Lord Supreme Cloud, we're going to enter the city anyway. Why don't we travel together and chat as we walk? It'll be a good story. Beigong Wushuang came over, as if he was very familiar with Yin Yang. Yin Yang glanced at the large group of experts beside him. Seemingly unintentionally, Beigong Wushuang guffawed and said, "There must be people here who want to attack you. However, everyone has shown their faces and exposed their tracks today, so there's nothing else to talk about. Why don't we all become your guards from now on? How about that?" So, other than those who appeared out of nowhere, like the three Shui brothers who were obviously pushed out to test the waters, Lord Supreme Cloud, you're already safe. Yin Yang had already thought of this even if Beigong Wushuang had not mentioned it. Otherwise, he would have had another layer of scruples. Why did Yin Yang have to show himself and fight here? If his tracks were exposed, he would be the target of countless attacks. However, the reality was that the assassination of Yin Yang was done behind his back and could not be brought to the surface. Once it was brought to the surface, he would definitely be investigated. A Saint King could attack with all his might because of karma, but he would not be willing to pay the price with his life. Once these people in front of him were exposed, they would never be involved in Yin Yang's misfortune again. If anything happened to Yin Yang, they would be the first to be investigated. Even if there were people who had yet to show themselves and were still lurking around, these people would not pose any threat before they parted ways at night. Instead, they would rush to the front line to ensure Yin Yang's personal safety. This was the benefit of the title of Mysterious Yellow Hero. The benefits and risks coexisted, and the twists and turns were not something that could be explained in a few words. Walking side by side with Yin Yang, Beigong Wushuang asked with a smile, "I wonder how long Lord Supreme Cloud will be staying in Night City this time?" Yin Yang glanced at Beigong Wushuang with a faint smile and answered with the same grin. "One has no choice in the martial world. I've stepped into the secular world again, and I feel that what I said is true. I'm afraid I can't decide how long I can stay here. At least, I'll have to see how the Sons of Saints feel before I can make a decision." Beigong Wushuang laughed heartily. "Lord Supreme Cloud, you're a straightforward man. I'm even more impressed by you now. It's just that the restrictions will inevitably increase after entering the city. Lord Supreme Cloud, You'll have to be careful and get used to it quickly. Yin Yang replied with a chuckle. Thank you for the reminder. I wonder if there are any customs in this city. Are we not allowed to casually injure the innocent? Even if it's out of one's own conscience. As long as the sword energy is raging and the force is unrestrained, it's probably not allowed to accidentally injure the civilians. Beigong Wushuang chuckled. Of course. A cultivator's path of cultivation is treacherous, while the people struggle to survive. There's a clear distinction between the two, and there's even a heavenly rule that we must abide by. Then I'm more at ease. At least there aren't many ways to deal with me in the city. Yin Yang smiled easily as he took a step forward. I wonder how Peerless Saint Sun plans to deal with me? No. I've never planned to deal with you. Beigong Wushuang shook his head like a rattle drum. From the beginning, I've always wanted to be friends with sect leader Yin. All right, I believe Peerless Saint Sun's words about not planning to deal with me, whether you believe it or not. Yin Yang said faintly, thank you. Beigong Wushuang's eyes darted around, before he suddenly switched to telepathy. His thin voice drilled into Yin Yang's ears. Lord Supreme Cloud, how about we work together? Work together? How? Yin Yang's expression remained unchanged as he replied telepathically. Right now, you're in a difficult situation. I believe that Supreme Cloud understands that some things can't be solved with the level of a person's cultivation base. Beigong Wushuang's voice was thin, but he spoke quickly. The three Shui brothers are only a scout. They're only there to test your limits. On the surface, your status in Tonight City can be said to be extremely honorable and unparalleled. No one will lay a hand on you for no reason. However, the number of people who want your life in the dark is definitely more than you can imagine, Supreme Cloud. Beigong Wushuang said. If it's the two of us, Supreme Cloud will have an additional chance of survival. At least, you won't have to worry about the threat from my side. Of course, I dare not make any more promises. Whether you can return alive is still up in the air. What if I don't work with you? Yin Yang asked faintly. You'll definitely die. Beigong Wushuang's voice was thin. How do you want to work together? Or rather, what do you stand to gain from me? Beigong Wushuang replied. Benefits are mutual, of course, but Lord Supreme Cloud hasn't agreed to work together yet. What other benefits do I stand to gain? Peerless Saint Child has also said that benefits are mutual. We can talk about it first. If there's no conflict of interest, we can naturally work together. On the other hand, if we don't show sufficient sincerity first, we can only go our separate ways. Yin Yang smiled. I know this very well. You know it too. The situation is clear now. Even if we work together sincerely, the possibility of me returning alive is slim. If we don't work together, even if the situation worsens, it's just adding insult to injury. He smiled nonchalantly. A collaboration like this is fine. It doesn't matter if we do or not. What do you think, Peerless Saint Child? Beigong Wushuang immediately felt that he was at a disadvantage. He gritted his teeth and said, Supreme Cloud, you're very perceptive indeed. Let's be frank, and put everything on the table. Yin Yang's voice grew calmer and more composed. Saint Child, please tell me what you want to do, how you want to do it, and what kind of help you can provide me. I have to think about it. This is the least I can do as the weaker party. Beigong Wushuang said angrily. You're the one to consider? Based on what? You claim to be the weaker party too. Based on what? It's my bottom line to be in charge of this collaboration. If we can't reach a consensus on this, there's no room for cooperation. Yin Yang's voice was elegant. Then I can only thank Saint Child for your kindness. I've always been the one taking the initiative when I work with others. Since everyone has the same bottom line, it's already destined that the collaboration won't work. His voice was filled with extreme confidence, tinged with a hint of a relaxed smile. It's impossible for me to hand over the leadership to someone other than myself. My words don't count, not even for a single day. It's the same in the past, the same today, and the same in the future. For a moment, Beigong Wushuang felt even more aggrieved and frustrated. However, he was a tough character who could let go easily. After considering the pros and cons of the matter, he decided not to dwell on it. It's reasonable for Supreme Cloud to have concerns. To show my sincerity, I'll make an exception and hand over the leadership to Lord Supreme Cloud. But the Heaven's Oath is still necessary. Yin Yang said faintly. The Heaven's Oath must be carried out. That's the real basis of cooperation. The 3 holy palaces each have 4 candidates. This means that there are 11 other candidates who are on par with me. Beigong Wushuang's voice rang in Yin Yang's ears. Even if you're the palace lord's biological son, you'll only be treated the same as the other candidates when you get to this position. The deeper reason is that the Supreme Heaven Pavilion selection won't give you any preferential treatment just because you're the palace lord's son. The Supreme Heaven Pavilion selection is the source of Supreme Cloud's current crisis. However, a crisis isn't necessarily a turning point. It can even be a golden opportunity. This time, I hope to cooperate with you and get rid of 3 of the candidates. Your crisis will be resolved, and my chances of becoming a candidate will increase greatly. That's too difficult. It's absolutely impossible. Let's forget about the cooperation. Yin Yang rejected the offer without hesitation. Beigong Wushuang's method of cooperation and the goal he wanted to achieve were simply wishful thinking. At least, from Yin Yang's point of view, all the forces of the 3 heavenly palaces were controlled by these people. How could he get rid of 3 of them just by opening his mouth? If he could do it, Yin Yang wouldn't mind killing them all. But in reality, it was impossible. So what if I get rid of 2? The result will still be the same. Beigong Wushuang bargained. You can only target 1 of them at most. Even so, as long as you succeed, you'll still achieve your goal, won't you? Then it's settled. I'll only target 1 of them. What I want to know now is, what can you do for me, Saint Peerless? Or rather, provide any help. I can guarantee the safety of the residence of 9 Supreme's members. At the same time, I can provide you with a secret meeting place. I promise to help you with the relevant information until the end of the cooperation. This is the best I can do, but I can't help you when the other saints attack you. I can't do anything about it. Since they had decided to cooperate, Beigong Wushuang straightforwardly laid out his bottom line. But on the other hand, I can promise you that if you have a chance to escape and happen to run into me, I'll give you a chance to escape. Then it's settled. Happy cooperation. After the vow to heaven, we'll naturally have a happy cooperation. Of course. Clean and efficient. It was settled. Both of them smiled at each other. However, whether or not they were truly cooperating, or what each of them was thinking was something that could not be put into words. They no longer walked in silence. Beigong Wushuang said with a smile, Lord Supreme Cloud's safe and sound return is a joyous occasion. Tonight, we'll join hands to welcome Lord Supreme Cloud. Please give us some face, Lord Supreme Cloud. Of course I have to do this. Yin Yang nodded in agreement. If everything went as expected, all the monsters and monsters would show up at tonight's banquet. A saint accompanied him, and 35 saint venerables and great lords clustered around him. Tonight, there were also hundreds of important people waiting at the city gates to welcome them. This was the scene of Yin Yang's reappearance in the world. It was not just grand, it was super grand. Even saint monarchs might not be able to witness such a grand spectacle even once in their lifetime. So many of the world's top experts, who did not belong to a single force, had gathered in one place for one person, in front of the city gate. The hundreds of people who had gathered here all looked in Yin Yang's direction. In the middle of the crowd were the people from the residence of 9 Supremes, and right next to them were the people from the 9th Supremes. The people around them were basically scrutinizing the people from the 2 sects with a strange gaze. Even the people from the 2 sects were sizing each other up. Shi Wuchen and the others thought, what's going on with this sect? What does it have to do with us? Ji Lingxi and the others thought, he founded the residence of 9 Supremes. I wonder how he's doing. His old friends are all on our side, so we can trust each other with our backs and work together. On the other hand, the other side is completely alone, fighting alone, and yet they can still make a name for themselves and not tarnish the name of the 9 Supremes think tank. Not bad. The onlookers thought. The Supreme Lords of the residence of 9 Supremes are extraordinary. Each of them has the cultivation base of a Supreme Saint. Even if we ignore Supreme Cloud Yin Yang, They are enough to stand in a sect with an upper-class celestial luck banner. However, what we're really curious about are the two leaders of the Ninth Supremes. It's said that they are the first and second most beautiful women in the Bound of Universe. I really want to see how beautiful these two girls are with my own eyes. At this time, the target of everyone's expectations, Yun Yang, came from afar with a group of people. The people who had been waiting went up to greet him at once. Shi Wuchen and the others were all excited as they hurried forward and called out, "Boss!" However, Yun Yang nodded and hurried past them. Under the surprised and puzzled gazes of Shi Wuchen and the others, he went to the two leaders of the residence of Nine Supremes. He glanced at them and said, "All of you are here. Very good indeed." The faces of Shi Wuchen and the others darkened at once. The leader indeed had an inexplicable relationship with the residents of Nine Supremes. Perhaps the leader of the residents of Nine Supremes was their leader's wife? The saying that one would lose their humanity to the opposite sex was indeed a wise saying. Even the well-known hero of the Bound of Universe, Lord Supreme Cloud, could not be exempted from it. Prioritizing a lover over a friend. Behind Shi Wuchen and the others, there were many disciples of the residents of Nine Supremes. They were equally excited as they stared at Yun Yang passionately. However, they dared not call out at this time. Only their hearts were burning with passion. It's the sect leader. It's really the sect leader. Look at his gaze, look at his figure, and look at his demeanor. It's definitely the one and only residence of Nine Supremes sect leader. This is great. The sect leader has finally returned safely. Their hearts that had been hanging in suspense for a long time could finally be at ease. I've written 6,000 words today. Cough, I should be able to explode tomorrow. I still need to think about Jilingxi's cough. Chapter 1368. Yun Yang sprinted all the way to Jilingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu. When he spoke, there was a slight tremble in his voice, revealing the agitation he was forcefully suppressing. Meeting the two equally veiled faces in front of him, Yun Yang was unprecedentedly agitated, unable to speak for a moment. Similarly, the pair of limpid eyes in front of him revealed an inexplicable agitation and deep longing. "You're back." Jilingxi tried to control her emotions. "We haven't seen each other for so many years. You're well." There was a tinge of emotion in her cold voice. It seemed like her control over her emotions was a level higher than Yun Yang's. But Shangguan Lingxiu, who was right next to her, knew that Jilingxi's hand was gripping hers so tightly that it hurt. What was Shangguan Lingxiu's cultivation base now? After her Aunt Mei master's guidance, she had already ascended to the heavens in a single bound. Her hand would not be harmed, even if she were to face a divine weapon head-on. Now that it was hurting from Jilingxi's grip, one could only imagine how much strength Jilingxi had exerted. Yun Yang's gaze shifted to Shangguan Lingxiu and said with a smile, "I thought it would be a long time before I could see you again. I didn't expect it to be so soon." Jilingxi, who had regained her rationality, wanted to retract her hand, but she was shocked to find that it was gripped tightly by Shangguan Lingxiu. She could only feel a wave of pain, but she could not pull her hand back. Shangguan Lingxiu said calmly with a hint of a smile, "Master did not force me to stay by his side, so I snuck out. I didn't expect that the place I was staying would be like this. Coincidentally, Lingxi was nearby, so we met in a few days. Then, I claimed the mountain and became the king. That's all. Now that we finally see you and know that you're safe, everyone's suspenseful hearts can finally be at ease." Yin Yang guffawed, but there was a slight tremor in his laughter. Of course, he knew why Shangguan Lingxiu was only half at ease. It was because he was still in an absolutely dangerous situation. His safety was not assured, and he had yet to break through the barrier of death. It's fine. Since we're able to meet again today, nothing will happen in the future," Yun Yang said in a low voice. Shangguan Lingxiu chuckled and said, "We didn't plan to pick you up initially, fearing that it would be too obvious. However, since we're already here, and the residence of Ninth Supreme's reputation is too, so we might as well reveal it openly." Her voice had always been calm and collected, giving people a feeling that she was calm and unruffled, bright and cheerful. However, Jilingxi was already rolling her eyes behind her mask. Sister, if you are really that calm, then let go of my hand. My hand is about to be crushed by you. Yunyang finally shifted his gaze away from the two girls and turned to Ling Xiaozui, Heaven's Inquisition, Gu Chaoyang, and Duga Cho, who were in the queue. He nodded in acknowledgement. These three were old friends, and it was all thanks to these three men that Ji Lingxi and Ling Xiaozui could come this far so smoothly. Faced with Yin Yang's gesture, the three of them were inexplicably excited, returning the greeting with cupped fists. However, they did not know how to address Yun Yang. The current Yun Yang was not only a hero of the Bound of Universe, who enjoyed the reputation of Supreme Cloud. He was also one of the top-notch experts in the Bound of Universe. He was a true Saint Emperor, an overlord of a region. As for the three of them, although they had experienced many fortuitous encounters and improved by leaps and bounds, Ling Xiaozui, who had the highest cultivation base, had only just stepped into the first level of Supreme Saint. The other two had stopped at the fourth level of Saint Emperor. And this cultivation base was all thanks to the residents of Ninth Supreme's Celestial Luck Banner. The companions who used to share arms with each other now felt like they were looking up to a great mountain. It was a little unfamiliar. Or perhaps they dared not offend him. Let's not talk about the small talk. We have plenty of time after we settle the matter at hand. I'll pour my heart out to you three old brothers then. We'll drink till we're drunk, till we're drunk. Yun Yang was intelligent enough to understand the trio's intentions immediately. He extended the invitation immediately, showing his sincerity. All right. We'll wait for little brother to drink till we're drunk then. Ling Xiaozui laughed. Definitely. Yun Yang nodded deeply. Ji Lingxi suddenly interjected, her tone filled with curiosity. I heard that you've become a fox's head now? Can you let me have a look and broaden my horizons? Hearing this, Yun Yang, who had always valued his image, was stunned. Could she not be so hurtful the moment they met? I'm a handsome man. And you're telling me you want to see my fox's head? When he turned to look at Shangguan Lingxiu, he saw that the latter's eyes were also filled with curiosity and a tinge of eagerness. Cough, cough, cough. Yun Yang rubbed his nose. This is really unsightly. Maybe next time. That's true. It's indeed inconvenient to do it in public with so many people around. Ji Lingxi came to a sudden realization and said, Then it's settled. Let me have a look tonight. Shangguan Lingxiu nodded and said, Let's do it then. I've always wanted to keep a white fox. I've always felt that white foxes are especially intelligent and adorable. Yun Yang rubbed his nose, feeling like he was being struck by lightning. I'm your husband. Fiancé. I'm not your pet. Adorable? I'm adorable. Sigh. Under the expectant gazes of Ling Xiaozui and the others, Yun Yang turned around speechlessly and said, You guys are here too. Sigh, you guys have improved a lot during this period. Everything is above my expectations. Greetings, sect leader senior brother. The disciples behind him bowed in unison. The disciples behind him knelt down at the same time. Greetings, sect leader master. May master be blessed. Rise all of you. Yin Yang smiled faintly. How's the situation in the residence? Is everything all right? Everything is fine. Shi Wuchen straightened himself, his eyes squinting as he smiled. The residence of 9 Supremes can only be described as changing with each passing day. There are at least a few hundred disciples breaking through every day. The Internal Affairs Hall is so busy with the rewards that they're almost overwhelmed. Major Domo Qian Duo has been nagging me every day that money really can't be spent, and mountains of gold and silver can't be built. Yun Yang chuckled and said, not bad at all. The disciples' progress has not let me down. Wuchen, send word to the Major Domo later. I've gained quite a bit during this period. It should be enough for our sect to feed on for tens of thousands of years. The conversation between Shi Wuchen and Yun Yang made the mouths of those who heard it twitch wildly. F***CK. Do you really think that the residents of 9 Supreme Second Supreme can spout nonsense? Hundreds of disciples breaking through in a day. What is this if not bragging? Regardless of the level, even if it was just a beginner, it was impossible for hundreds of disciples to break through in a day. What a load of bullsh*t. And that newly ascended Lord Supreme Cloud. It's one thing for him to act like everything is within my expectations. But what about the tens of thousands of years of feeding on a sect? Are you really serious? Even if the Residence of Nine Supremes is still a sect with an upper-class celestial luck banner, how many tens of thousands of years would it take for it to be a newly established sect with only a few hundred disciples? Were the Residence of Nine Supremes first and second Supremes all like this? How arrogant! How arrogant! They did not know that Yin Yang was being modest when he said that tens of thousands of years of feeding on the sect. In fact, Yin Yang's current assets were enough for the Residence of Nine Supremes to use until the end of time. Then, the leader of the Residence of Nine Supremes, Lord Supreme Cloud, said, "By the way, the most taboo in cultivation is to make haste. As teachers, remember to pay more attention to them, and don't let them take the wrong path. Of course, there are people keeping an eye on this every day. There will never be any mistakes." Yin Yang chuckled and said, "Let me introduce to all of you. This is the Residence of Nine Supreme's second Supreme, the famous Supreme Sword, the Three-Autumn Sword Shi Wuchen." Then, he introduced Shi Wuchen, Luo Dajiang, and the others one by one. Ji Lingxi and Shengguan Lingxiu greeted them one by one. How could they not know that Yin Yang was introducing them to their husband's subordinates in this realm? Those at the back are the disciples of the Residence of Nine Supremes. The little girl in white is the eldest disciple of my sect leader, Yin Xiuxin. Yin Yang introduced the other disciples as well. Yin Xiuxin and the others went forward to kowtow. Cough. Yin Yang coughed and said, "Next, young and old men of the Residence of Nine Supremes. It's my turn to introduce two extraordinary figures who are like gods to you." Shi Wuchen and the others waited solemnly. They had long understood that the existence of the Residence of Nine Supremes was unusual. But after a long period of speculation, it was difficult to determine the relationship or origin between this sect and the Residence of Nine Supremes, or the first Supreme Yin Yang himself. This is Ji Lingxi. Ji as in strategy, Lingxi as in telepathy. This means that her surname is Shengguan, and her name is Lingxiu. Cough cough. These two are my fiancés. Cough cough cough. Cough cough. Sect leader Yun's sudden words immediately caused countless people to cough. Among them, Shi Wuchen and the others were the worst. Dumbfounded, they choked at the same time, creating a chain reaction. Even Beigong Wushuang, who had been watching with interest from the sidelines, was dumbfounded. Although he managed to maintain a smile on his face for a moment, he still couldn't control himself and started coughing violently, following in the footsteps of the others. They knew they were related, but this relationship was a little too explosive. Both of them were your fiancés? The first and second most beautiful women in the Bound of Universe were your fiancés? Both of them were running a sect together, a sect leader and a vice sect leader. How could they have such a deep relationship? For a moment, everyone felt as if they were struck by lightning, and they were dumbfounded. Yin Yang, who was probably one of the few who had not coughed, cleared his throat and said, "Everyone knows that I have to face some things in the near future. My life and death may be uncertain. However, if I go back alive, it will be the time to marry them. If not..." Suddenly, Ji Lingxi and Shengguan Lingxiu interrupted him in unison. "If not, then we shall go to the underworld and be husband and wife." The crowd was shocked once more when they heard it. The eyes of the hundreds of experts present flickered without exception. Although Yin Yang did not say it explicitly, everyone knew that the matter of his life and death being uncertain should happen right here, right now, in this city tonight. If he could walk out of this city, all the dangers thereafter would no longer be a problem to him. On the other hand, if he could not walk out, he would definitely die here. Now, with the disparity between the enemy's forces and his, it was almost certain that he was destined to die here. Even if he was alone, without any worries or worries, the chances of him leaving this place alive would be less than 10%. Now, however, he had exposed the existence of his two fiancés at this delicate moment, as well as all of his and his two fiancés' subordinates. Didn't this cause the already terrible situation to become even worse? Two exceptionally heavy weights had firmly dropped him here. It was more than 100 kilograms on top of one another. he could only become more and more immobile. If there was still a 10% chance of survival before this, there was probably not even a 5% chance of survival now. Looking at Yin Yang's back, Beigong Wushuang was unprecedentedly puzzled. Yin Yang was definitely not a fool. He would not be unaware of his own situation. Under such circumstances, he should be trying his best to avoid being exposed. Why did he have to expose Jilingxi and the others here? Although everyone knew this in their hearts, the people of the residence of the Ninth Supremes could still be safe if he did not expose himself. It was a rule of the martial world that one's wife and children should not be implicated. If it was not an irreconcilable blood feud, it would only target the target and not involve the family members. Furthermore, Yun Yang had made great contributions to the bound of universe. Once Yun Yang perished, all threats would be eliminated, and the higher authorities of the three heavenly palaces would have to treat Yun Yang's family and sex with the utmost respect. Now, however, Yun Yang had tied his two fiancées and the two residences of 9 Supremes to his chariot at the same time, facing death at the same time. It was no different from digging his own grave and dragging all those close to him down with him. Yun Yang was obviously not a fool, so why did he still do it? What was the true meaning behind it? Although Beigong Wushuang had only known Yun Yang for a short period of time, he would rather believe that he was a fool than believe that Yun Yang was one. Looks like he really has other plans, Beigong Wushuang thought to himself. A loud laughter suddenly rang out. Lei Qianli of the Sacred Heart Palace welcomes the return of Lord Bound of Universe Supreme Cloud. The great elder of the Sacred Heart Palace had arrived. Yun Yang's gaze froze as he said, "Greetings, great elder." Lei Qianli said loudly, "Lord Supreme Cloud's trip to the demon race has brought honor to the Bound of Universe. This old man feels honored as well. Today, under the strict order of the Palace Master, we will protect Lord Supreme Cloud's return at all costs." Before Lei Qianli's voice trailed off, 100 experts of the Sacred Heart Palace behind him bowed at the same time. Protect Lord Supreme Cloud's safe return at all costs. Don't let anyone cause trouble. Thank you, everyone. Yin Yang thanks you all here. Yin Yang bowed deeply. After that, the other high-grade cultivators all greeted him, trying their best to be polite. No matter how reluctant they were, they still had to pay their respects to the continent's hero, the Bound of Universe Supreme Cloud's identity. Another loud laughter rang out. It was Beigong Wushuang, who walked out slowly with a majestic gait. Lord Supreme Cloud, tonight the 12 of us will host a banquet for you at the Golden Knight Tower to welcome you. We hope that Lord Supreme Cloud will do us the honor. Yun Yang said solemnly, "That's for sure." Beigong Wushuang looked around and said, "If everyone is free, why don't we go together? We won't go home until we're drunk." Everyone echoed his words. Yin Yang smiled. "We have quite a number of people here. Can the Golden Knight Tower fit all of them?" Beigong Wushuang laughed. "Don't worry, Lord Supreme Cloud. Back then, many heroes of the Bound of Universe went to the Bloody Soul Mountain for a banquet at the Golden Knight Tower. That day, more than 7,000 experts above the Royal Saint Realm gathered together. Speaking of which, this Golden Knight Tower was built for that banquet. It's just that if all of us were to go today, I'm afraid the place would still look empty." Yin Yang laughed and said, "If that's the case, I'll bring my brothers and disciples to have a good meal tonight." "Welcome," Beigong Wushuang replied. Beigong Wushuang smiled and said, "In my opinion, the two sisters-in-law and their disciples can go as well. Such a grand occasion might only happen once in a lifetime." Jilingxi said coldly, "If I'm willing to go, of course I'll go. If I'm not willing, who can force me to go?" The moment she saw Beigong Wushuang, she felt an inexplicable rage. Before this, Beigong Wushuang had requested to meet her many times, using his identity as a chosen saint. Even though both of them had never met face to face, Jilingxi was still annoyed by him. She had always felt that this fellow was not a good person and had ulterior motives. Shangguan Lingxiu shared the same opinion as Jilingxi, disliking this person as well. Beigong Wushuang laughed and said, "Lord Supreme Cloud, you've been on the move. It's only right that you settle down and rest early. Let us enter the city, please." The crowd parted to form a path. Yun Yang led the way, followed by the people from the residence of Nine Supremes, followed by Ji Lingxi and the others from the residence of Ninth Supremes, and then the various experts. Beigong Wushuang was at the back, his pace slow. Looking at the silhouettes moving in front of him, he lifted his head slightly to look at Yin Yang's back, then turned to look at the green mountain in the distance. He was afraid that Yin Yang would sense the murderous intent in his eyes. Fiancé! Beigong Wushuang's heart was filled with an indescribable rage as he repeated the few words. Despite his esteemed status, he had not been able to meet her even once despite visiting her so many times. Yun Yang, on the other hand, was the fiancé of 2 women at the same time. Beigong Wushuang closed his eyes and murmured, Femme fatale, femme fatale. Even after a long time, he still could not completely calm himself down. The journey into the city was smooth, and they entered right away. Boss, a few days ago, the mayor of Jinshao City issued an order that no one is allowed to wear a mask. Today, a few of us are wearing masks, but no one said anything. Shi Wuchen said telepathically. A few days ago? Yin Yang was taken aback. Yes. Yin Yang's expression darkened. I understand. The lanterns were first lit. Today's Golden Night Tower was far more dazzling than before. Neon lights shot into the sky, illuminating hundreds of miles around it as bright as day. In front of the door, 48 plainly dressed girls were all as beautiful as flowers. They were divided into 2 groups and stood on either side of the door, naturally forming a beautiful and captivating scene. 9 huge lanterns hung high above the Golden Night Tower's door. Each lantern had a large word written on it, and when put together, it formed 9 words. Welcome, Lord Bound of Universe Supreme Cloud. At this moment, there was a continuous stream of experts rushing over from all directions. They came in an endless stream, one after another. The banquet this time had stirred up the entire city, but its influence was unimaginable. There were no invitations for this banquet. You could come if you wanted, but you could not come if you didn't want to. It seemed that the threshold was extremely low. In reality, however, those who were not qualified, or had insufficient cultivation base, would not come at all. High-level cultivators at least had this bit of self-awareness. They would never come to ask for a snub, or to embarrass themselves. After all, if one were to lose face in a place like this, it would at least lead to the birth of inner demons. Or at worst, they would be hated by super experts, who knew when they would die without even knowing why. After the participants entered the hall, and walked 100 feet forward, they saw a huge banquet hall. The hall was at least 100 feet high, and it was completely empty in the middle. The surroundings were divided into 3 levels of stairs, which were further divided into smaller areas. Although the areas were divided, no matter which area you sat in, you could clearly see all the people in all directions. Just this huge hall alone was enough to accommodate 4,000 to 5,000 people for a banquet. At the entrance of the Golden Night restaurant, there was a person who called out names and led the way. The person in charge of calling out names was a peak-level holy venerable expert. With a light word, his voice spread throughout the entire restaurant, and everyone could hear him from far and near. With a single word, a young lady dressed in white came forward and led the newcomers to her own area. There were also some people who came forward and reported their names, cultivation base, and affiliation, waiting for the allocation. However, the holy venerable expert would only say apologetically in a low voice, "I'm sorry, it seems like there is no place for you inside." After saying this, the newcomers were about to leave with a face full of shame. Unhappiness, displeasure, and dissatisfaction were not in the heart of the person who called out names. Thus, there was no one who would cause trouble, pick a fight, or look for trouble. Perhaps they could not, or perhaps they could not. All high-level cultivators, besides judging the situation, cherished their lives even more. If it was not for the great benefits, or if the mysterious universe was facing the danger of extinction, very few people would be willing to die and disappear in a day. As people started to enter and take their seats in the surrounding area, those who were qualified to enter this area had to be at least Lord Saints. Some were alone, some were in groups of 3 to 5, and some were in groups of 7 to 8. Holy venerable cultivators, who had not reached the level of Lord Saints, were not qualified to take a seat here. All of them went to the higher rows of seats. Slowly, most of the people in the meeting seemed to have taken their seats. 70 to 80% of the seats were already occupied. Everyone had a pot of tea in front of them. Many young ladies dressed in white carried the teapot through the crowd like butterflies. They were graceful and graceful. The great elder of the Sacred Heart Palace, Lei Qianli, brought his people and sat in the exclusive area of the Sacred Heart Palace. His expression was calm. The other large private rooms were also occupied by people one after another. At this moment, there were only 14 to 15 rooms left in the east, west, and north directions. Soon, someone said. Lei Qianli smiled faintly and sighed. This is probably the first time in the past 10,000 years that all the saints have gathered in such an orderly manner, right? Someone beside him laughed and said, "At least, I have never heard of such a gathering before." A gathering of heroes. Someone sighed emotionally. I said it should be the dragon and tiger storm. Perhaps it was a prophecy. After these words were spoken, a faint murderous intent gradually appeared in the large hall. Although it was hidden, it truly existed, and there was not the slightest bit of it being fake. At this time, a name was announced at the door. Lord Yu Zhenxiao, the saint of the Eastern Celestial Palace, has arrived. Lord Dongfang Xingchen, the saint of the Eastern Celestial Palace, has arrived. Lord Lai Kuangfeng, the saint of the Eastern Celestial Palace, has arrived. Lord Insinyu, the saint of the Eastern Celestial Palace, has arrived. The 4 saints of the Eastern Celestial Palace had arrived. Each of them brought 4 experts with them. As the 4 of them entered, the crowd fell silent and looked at them with respect. Mo Dao Saint was at the peak of this world and could look down on authority. However, there were still many limitations. At least when facing the saints of the 3 celestial palaces, the saint monarchs did not have the sense of superiority of being a peak expert. Perhaps they really had to lower their heads. After all, the saints were the supreme existences of the 3 celestial palaces. Even if they couldn't ascend to the position of the celestial palace lord, they would still have a high position and would at least be ranked in the top 10. They could be said to be high and mighty figures. Dongfang Xingchen walked forward slowly and brought his men to the central box of the 7 largest boxes in the north. As for Insinyu and the rest, they had a tacit understanding of each other. Before the palace lord was decided, the position of the palace lord's son was naturally the highest. This was also a convention, or in other words, it was like this in public. Shimen Huanyu, the saint of the Western Heaven Holy Palace, has arrived. Lu Mingsheng, the saint of the Western Heaven Holy Palace, has arrived. Jia Shixiang, the saint of the Western Heaven Holy Palace, has arrived. Feng Patian, the saint of the Western Heaven Holy Palace, has arrived. These 4 people's movements were similar to those of the Eastern Celestial Palace. The palace lord's son, Shimen Huanyu, was at the most northern core position. Beigong Wushuang, the saint of the Northern Wasteland Demon Palace, has arrived. Huan Wenyuan, the saint of the Northern Wasteland Demon Palace, has arrived. Nan Tianyin, the saint of the Northern Wasteland Demon Palace, has arrived. Lan Ting, the saint of the Northern Wasteland Demon Palace, has arrived. In the minds of ordinary people, the actions of the Northern Wasteland Demon Palace should be similar to those of the Eastern and Western Celestial Palaces, with the son of the Northern Wasteland Palace Lord, Beigong Wushuang, sitting at the highest position. However, the actions of the 4 Beigong Wushuang were completely different from those of the other 2 celestial palaces. When Dongfang Xingchen and the other Eastern Celestial Palaces chosen arrived, they were full of smiles and treated each other with respect. When Shimen Huanyu and the other Western Heaven Holy Palaces chosen arrived, they also had amiable expressions on their faces. The 4 chosen seemed to be extremely harmonious. When the 4 holy sons of the Northern Desolate Demon Palace arrived, the atmosphere was extremely tense. Beigong Wushuang, who was also a direct descendant of the Northern Desolate Demon Palace, arrived with a frosty expression. The other 3 also ignored each other and looked at each other with undisguised killing intent in their eyes. It was as if they couldn't wait for the other party to die. No one would have thought that the relationship between the four chosen of the Northern Wasteland Demon Palace would be this bad. Furthermore, they did not conceal it at all, exposing it to the world. Everyone in the meeting felt sad at the sight of this. On the contrary, the chosen of the two celestial palaces did not have any strange expressions. Only their faces were full of deep meaning and thought-provoking. They seemed to have long been aware of this situation and were already used to it. Beigong Wushuang walked up to the northern room with large strides. The other three also brought their guards and walked to their rooms expressionlessly. They did not even greet each other. After Huan Wenyuan, one of the Northern Wasteland Demon Palace's chosen, sat down, his gaze swept across the two guest rooms and asked indifferently, "Lord Supreme Cloud is not here yet?" His words came out unhurriedly, as if he was speaking from the bottom of his heart. He did not have a specific target in mind, but he just said it like that. Beigong Wushuang rolled his eyes and looked at the sky. The other chosen did not reply either. However, the owner of the Golden Knight Tower, a huge fatty, took a step forward and said respectfully, reporting to Lord Chosen, "Lord Supreme Cloud is not here yet." Huan Wenyuan snorted and murmured, "What an arrogant man." This time, no one paid attention to him. Even the owner of the Golden Knight Tower did not dare to make a sound. Huan Wenyuan did not mind. He sat down in a very comfortable position and then slammed the table, shouting, "Where's the wine? Where's the food? Where's the tea?" At this time, Lai Kuangfeng, the chosen of the Eastern Celestial Palace, said with dissatisfaction, "Why do you have so many bad habits? Do you think this is your own home?" Huan Wenyuan jumped to his feet and said angrily, "Who did you say?" Lai Kuangfeng also stood up and said angrily, "I'm talking about you. What's wrong?" Huan Wenyuan was furious. "Say that again?" Lai Kuangfeng said angrily, "I'm talking about you. What do you dare to do? Do you have a problem with that?" Huan Wenyuan suddenly laughed. "I knew you were talking about me. Out of so many people, you're the only one who said that. This is fate. I say, Brother Lai, why don't you just come over and have a drink?" Everyone in the hall, except for those from the Northern Wasteland Demon Palace, had their eyes popped out of their sockets. Well, what kind of godly development was this? How could this chosen of the Northern Wasteland Demon Palace be like this? This was 2F** King funny, wasn't it? Lai Kuangfeng was also stunned. He couldn't help but scratch his head and said in surprise, "Huh? What did you say? Why aren't you angry anymore? Shouldn't you be furious and filled with indignation?" He was ready to fight, but the other party suddenly chickened out. For a moment, Lai Kuangfeng was at a loss. Huan Wenyuan said, "Brother Lai, you are a man of character. We have the same temperament. We regret not having met earlier. Heroes cherish heroes. Why are you angry? What are you thinking, Brother Lai? This is ridiculous." Lai Kuangfeng's face became more and more confused. Same temperament? Temperament? This? He scratched his head, as if he couldn't believe that he was also this kind of person. He sat down with a dumbfounded face and muttered, "Regret not having met earlier? No, I don't feel that way at all." Huan Wenyuan said arrogantly, "Who else wants to scold me? I'm just asking who else." It was quiet all around. Not a single sound could be heard. Huan Wenyuan snorted and slammed the table, bellowing, "Where's the wine? Where's the food? Where's the tea? Where's the people? Are they all dead?" Hearing this, everyone's face darkened. What kind of person was this? What kind of person was the holy son of the Northern Wasteland Demon Palace? How could he be so unexpected? The fat owner of the Golden Knight Tower was sweating profusely. Coming. Lord Holy Son, please calm down. Hurry up," Huan Wenyuan said angrily. "If you don't hurry up, I'll tear down your Golden Knight Tower." Everyone was speechless. Damn, the Northern Wasteland Demon Palace was amazing, daring to say that they were going to touch the Golden Knight Tower. Didn't they know that the Golden Knight Tower was the place where the Blood Soul Mountain vowed to fight? It was fine if they did something behind the scenes, but to say something so blatantly like this, did they even want to think about it? At this moment, another announcement came from the door. "Lord Heaven Supreme Cloud has arrived with the residents of 9 Supremes." The residence of 9 Supremes has arrived. Now that no one was seated, there were only the 2 largest boxes on the east side and the west side. These 2 boxes were reserved for these 2 sections. Initially, the residents of 9 Supremes and the 9th Supremes were not qualified to sit here, at least not to enjoy such an excellent position. However, these 2 sects were closely related to Yin Yang, so their statuses had risen accordingly, and they were treated with special respect. The crowd turned to look at the source of the voice. At the entrance, a person dressed in purple with a huge mask on his head walked in leisurely and calmly. Beside him were 2 ladies who wore white veils as well. One was dressed in white, while the other was dressed in red. The one in red was Jilingxi, while the one in white was Shangguan Lingxiu. Both of them were tall and had graceful postures. Although their true appearances had not been revealed, their movements still carried the aura of celestial beings that had descended from the heavens. At this moment, as they walked slowly in the hall, it gave people the feeling that they were stepping on colorful auspicious clouds, completely out of this world. As the 2 ladies followed Yin Yang in, they immediately attracted admiring gazes. At this moment, a person who was sitting in the furthest box on the north side of the main seat stood up and coughed. "Lord Supreme Cloud, please wait." "You are?" "I'm Si Wuya, the city governor of Jinshao City." "Greetings, Lord Supreme Cloud." "Oh, it's City Governor Si. Greetings." Yin Yang's tone was still calm, accompanied by a hint of amicability. However, no one knew that his eyes behind the mask were cold. As expected, the show was about to begin. "Si Wuya? Did he want to become a dead crow?" "Lord Supreme Cloud, many masked men came into Jinshao City some time ago, claiming to be the Bound of Universe's Supreme Cloud. These people were all deceivers, and were proven to be fakes in the end. However, this cost a lot of manpower, resources, and time. After all, with the title of the Bound of Universe's hero, many conventional methods can't be used at all." Si Wuya coughed and said, "I've reported it to the holy sons of the 3 celestial palaces, and they've come up with a new rule. Whoever comes to Jinshao City is not allowed to wear a mask or a veil." He looked embarrassed. "After all, I hope Lord Supreme Cloud can forgive me." Yin Yang was silent for a moment before he asked, So please forgive me, Lord Supreme Cloud," Si Wuya said. Yin Yang said, "What you're trying to say is that even if I've proven my identity, I still can't wear a mask and have to show my true face. Is that so?" Si Wuya looked troubled. This. I won't hide it from you. There are still many people pretending to be Lord Supreme Cloud. If we don't use this method, we can't distinguish them quickly. Fortunately, everyone knows that Lord Supreme Cloud has been plotted against by the demon clan. Your current appearance is different from an ordinary person's," Yin Yang said. "At the end of the day, I still have to take off my mask, am I right?" Si Wuya coughed and stole a few glances before he answered, "Yes." Yin Yang chuckled strangely. "What if I insist on not taking it off?" "Then I'm sorry. This welcoming banquet is organized for Lord Supreme Cloud. Those who wear masks are all people with unknown identities. How can they share the same fate?" Si Wuya did not budge an inch. Instead, he fought back with equal harshness. "Oh," Yin Yang asked. He looked around and said faintly, "I wonder if anyone else has the same thought, thinking that I, who insists on wearing a mask, am unworthy of sharing the same fate?" At this time, Dongfang Xingchen from the Eastern Sky Palace spoke up. "This Saint Sun feels that there is no need for Lord Supreme Cloud to remove his mask. This rule can be applied to anyone, but only to Lord Supreme Cloud. This is a great insult to Lord Supreme Cloud." Beigong Wushuang said, "Coincidentally, I think so too." Huan Wenyuan said loudly, "Why? Everyone else has taken off their masks. Can a hero be an exception?" Nantian sneered. "Hero? He has to prove that he's a hero first." Lanting said, "Words are no proof. Everything is up to the heavens. I also think that it's better to remove the mask. Wearing a mask at the banquet is a form of disrespect to everyone." For a moment, the representatives of various forces spoke up. A small half of them thought that Yin Yang, as the victim of this matter, had no obligation to remove his mask. However, more people thought that since the decree was aimed at everyone, Yun Yang should not be an exception, and had to remove his mask. Yun Yang chuckled, shocking the crowd. He said, "I didn't think that there would be such a mess at a banquet supposedly held for me. I won't participate in this welcoming banquet then." Before his voice trailed off, Yun Yang turned and left. He was only pretending, knowing that these people would not let him leave. Sure enough, Si Wuya's eerie voice rang out. "You want to leave without proving your identity?" Huan Wenyuan sneered as well. "That's right. Even if you want to leave, you have to remove your mask first." Yin Yang smirked coldly. "Empty words are a waste of breath. Could someone please remove this mask for me?" Once he said this, the crowd fell silent. Everyone could make a fuss. The law did not punish the masses, and it was difficult to punish the masses. However, if they were to attack Supreme Cloud in front of everyone, it would be a full-fledged falling out. Not many would dare to do so. This had nothing to do with Yin Yang's cultivation base, but his identity. A hero of the bound of universe. Who dares to fight? Dongfang Xingchen stood up, his gaze shaking the void. Whoever dares to fight, whoever dares to be rude to Supreme Cloud, will have to go through me first. Huan Wenyuan stood up abruptly. Not daring to show your true face doesn't necessarily mean that you have a wicked heart. How can you say that he is Supreme Cloud? Others don't dare, but I do. Beigong Wushuang stood up abruptly and slammed the table. How dare you? Huan Wenyuan, who gave you the courage to be so presumptuous? Nantian Yun and Lanting stood up at the same time and laughed strangely. The more we debate, the clearer we become. Do we still need courage to confirm the truth and reveal it to the world? Following that, the other saints also stood up one after another. It was going to be a chaotic scene. Chapter 1369. Lord Supreme Cloud, please take a seat. Dongfang Xingchen's eyes were filled with disdain. Today's banquet is to welcome Lord Yun. There's no need to spoil the mood for such a trivial matter. Sit down. I'd like to see who has any objections. A few others looked at him coldly. This banquet is indeed for Lord Supreme Cloud. But what right does he have to sit? He's wearing a mask. Who knows who he is? Ha 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 ha. Yin Yang guffawed again. I know all of you are trying to provoke me, but today's banquet is for Supreme Cloud. It can't end without a cause. Before his words echoed in the air, Yin Yang had already stood up and stretched out his arm, hollering coldly. Who do you think you are? How dare you make a fuss here? Whether I take off my mask or not is not something you can interfere with. A ray of white light morphed into a large hand that resembled white jade. It disappeared in a flash, filled with murderous intent. With a swoosh, a strong gust of wind swept across the sky, sending chills down everyone's spine. Siwia cried out, Save me, Lord. More than a dozen spiritual energies rushed in from all directions, blocking his path forcefully. A few voices cried out, Supreme Cloud, stop! With a loud boom, Yun Yang's jade-colored hand was shattered in the air. However, the hand that seemed to have dissipated and could no longer do anything gathered again. Like a hurricane, it sped toward Siwia's head under everyone's watchful eyes. 5 fingers closed. There was a smacking sound. Siwia's head exploded like a crushed watermelon. His divine soul emerged with a whoosh. However, a beam of black light shot out at the same time. As soon as the divine soul took on a human form, it was seized by the black light and shattered. Yin Yang's killing blow, and the dozens of Saint Lord's attempts to stop him were futile. The city lord of Tonight City was dead, his body and soul destroyed. Everyone was indescribably shocked when they saw the unexpected event unfold before their eyes. Yin Yang strode forward and said coldly, Members of the residents of 9 Supremes, follow me to your seats. I must taste the wine of this banquet today, to see if it's bitter or sweet. As he spoke, a domineering aura rose from his body. It was as if he was the enemy of the world, and no one dared to stop him. He strode forward with an indomitable aura. No one dared to stop him. Behind him, Shi Wuchen and the others answered in unison, and followed closely behind Yun Yang. They could feel the blood boiling in their chests as they were filled with pride. At this moment, to be able to follow the sect leader and charge forward in front of the heroes of the world. The only thing they felt was that even if they died, it would be worth it. After taking a few steps forward, Huan Wenyuan only had time to say, "Wait." Before he could finish, Yun Yang had already sat down and turned to look at him, his eyes filled with murderous intent. Northern Wasteland Demonic Palace's son of God, how dare you? Yun Yang walked over boldly, leaving those from the residence of 9 Supremes where they were, along with the rest of the people from the residence of 9 Supremes. They didn't care anymore. Everyone was astonished. Why did he leave on his own? Weren't the 2 residents of 9th Supremes his 2 fiancés? His 2 fiancés were also wearing veils. Is there something else? The situation was very strange. Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu looked at each other and saw the hint of a smile in each other's eyes. Now it's our turn. Although the city lord is dead, the ban in tonight's city is still in place, Huan Wenyuan said coldly. Huan Wenyuan said coldly, Lord Yun Yang, as the person involved and the hero of the Bound of Universe, has sacrificed a lot. It's reasonable for him to insist on wearing it, but you 2 women have knowingly violated the law. You must remove your veils. As he spoke, countless pairs of eyes were on Yun Yang. These are your fiancés. What are you going to do? Asking your woman to take off her mask was much more humiliating than asking you to take off your mask. Yun Yang said faintly, I am me. My fiancés are my fiancés. They have their own freedom to do what they want. If you have the ability to remove their veils, I won't say anything. In the eyes of the crowd, this was a show of weakness, an extreme cowardice. What do you mean you won't say anything? You look like a man just now. Why are you so timid now? Are you going to watch your fiancés be bullied? Are you going to ignore everything? Are you going to do nothing? He just watched with his eyes wide open. What bullsh asterisk T was he happy to see it happen? What the F asterisk CK? Are you still a man? Ji Lingxi chuckled and walked to the box where the residence of 9th Supremacy was, saying, People of the residence of 9th Supremacy, follow me. I'd like to see who will remove my veil as well. Amidst her laughter, she had already exchanged a look with Yun Yang. Yun Yang returned the look of watching a show. Huan Wenyuan hollered, Go remove their veils. They are not the heroes of the Bound of Universe. How can they be an exception? Before his words echoed in the air, 7 to 8 silhouettes leaped up at the same time. 2 of them were the fastest, moving like lightning and already within 10 feet of the 2 women. The others landed resentfully. There were too many people who wanted to go for this mission, and their enthusiasm was far above that of targeting Yun Yang. They were the legendary number 1 and number 2 beauties in the world. No one had ever seen their lineup, so who would not want to see their real faces? If they could succeed in one strike, they would be able to boast about it in the future. In a flash, 2 silhouettes were already in front of Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu. Both their hands came down hard, not allowing any explanation. Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu's footsteps did not stop, as if they did not see anything, continuing to stride forward. The hands of the 2 Saint Lords were just about to touch their veils. Pardon me. With one word they grabbed them. It was at this moment that Ji Lingxi's body glowed with a faint white light. As the white light flickered, a thin bolt of lightning shot out at an extreme speed. At the same time, a red light quietly rose from Shangguan Lingxiu as well. As the red light flickered, a black bolt of lightning appeared forcefully. Those who attended the meeting today were all highly skilled cultivators, so their eyesight was naturally excellent. Everyone could see that the 2 bolts of lightning were very thin. At least, they did not look like they had much lethality to speak of. However, it was those 2 thin bolts of lightning. Boom. Ugh. 2 cries of agony rang out at the same time. The 2 Saint Lords who had just pounced on Ji Lingxi and Shangguan Lingxiu felt as if they had been struck by a giant's palm. As they spat out blood, they were thrown backward at an even faster speed than when they had attacked earlier. Everyone could still see clearly that their bodies, which were still in midair, were still surrounded by thin zigzagging bolts of lightning, swimming from head to toe. Then with a light crack, the bodies of the 2 Saint Monarchs exploded in midair. All the bones, muscles, and blood in his body were completely separated from his body. There was no mistake at all. At this moment, it was as if the two of them had set off two extra-large blood-colored fireworks in the air. Their flesh and bones separated completely, leaving only two complete skeletons that continued to float backward. Crack, crack. Finally, the two skeletons could no longer bear the burden and began to separate and disperse, turning into bits and pieces that slowly disappeared in the air. Then, just as the souls of the two Saint Lords appeared, two hands appeared in the air. One was slightly black while the other was snow white. With two soft sounds, the souls of the two Saint Lords followed in the footsteps of the Castellan tonight, crushed into pieces and doomed eternally. Their bodies and souls were destroyed. After writing this chapter, he was somewhat stuck. I think I made a mistake. I'll update this chapter first today. If it's not easy to proceed, I'll edit this chapter again tomorrow. You're tuning in to the Lee May's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.